Hello everyone and welcome back to another Strategoy video. Today is a very special day for me and for my two co-hosts as well, because we are reviewing the Lumineth Battletome. Now all the information was only released yesterday at the time of us recording it, but we really wanted to get out our views and all the information that we can provide already to you guys as soon as possible, because I've noticed personally that there's a lot of negativity around our Battletome right now. So we want to tackle that straight away, and obviously you can expect more guides in the future that go in depth on certain units, spells and other stuff. Joining me today is obviously Ryan, my usual co-host, and we've also brought along Siegfried, who you might know from the Lumineth and Strategoy Discord. Ryan, Siegfried, welcome. Ryan, you're still in the US?
Yep, and hopefully my connection holds up better this time. Yeah, I'm here for a wedding, so I might have to dip out a little bit early. We're gonna try to, if we get to the lists, we'll talk about my list first, and then I might have to dip. But hopefully I make it through as far as possible.
Yeah, and Siegfried, you're joining us for the first time. Welcome.
Thank you. Greetings. I'm from Greece. I've been a wargamer for over 20 years. And I'm a huge fan of Lumineth
and of the Alarith.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so we've got three great minds here, or two at least, if I'm being kind to or unkind to one of us, probably myself in that case. The review is going to be as usual, so obviously we start with the allegiance abilities, we go through spells, artifacts, commentaries and all that, and then we move on to our 6 favorite war scrolls. We don't review all war scrolls during this review because, well, first of all, other content creators have done that before us, and secondly, you can expect guides anyway, so it would not make much sense to do so. Then we'll move on to some important changes. We're looking at some unfortunate changes as well. And then we've got 3 whole army lists for you, and lo and behold, we've got one for each, I would say, sub-faction, sort of, not sub-faction, sub-allegiance almost. So we've got a Vanari list, we've got a Hurakan list, and we've got an Alarith list. So we've got everything covered in this book. And then we move on to the conclusion. Now guys, I do want to ask you to please do leave a like, a comment, share this video around. We've worked very hard on making it possible for all of us to come together, and now it was actually very difficult with all our schedules, so I hope you enjoy.
Yeah, we're in 3 different time zones. So.
Yeah, it's crazy. And you've got a wedding, and I just came back from a birthday party, so busy. And Siegfried, you kind of skipped your day off to make content for this video as well.
Well, it's fine. It's happy times to talk about Warhammer.
Yeah, speaking of happy times, or maybe unhappy times, depending on how you look at it, the allegiance abilities. If you've just watched our Zinj review, which you definitely should if you haven't, even if it's just to learn about the competition, I suppose, you'll notice a vast difference in content on the same slide here. So I think the Zinj review, if I'm not mistaken, Ryan, had 8 allegiance abilities.
I mean, that's being generous. Some of those are just like who's coalition.
Yeah.
And remember, Too Long Didn't Read, a lot of what you used to have in this section got moved onto War Scrolls.
Exactly.
So it's not like it disappeared.
Yeah, so we've got 2 remaining allegiance abilities here, but it's not like the army lost a whole bunch of rules here. They just moved it back to the War Scrolls, which is something I think they did in first edition and then decided to swap around, and now they swapped it around again. Before we move on to allegiance abilities, what do you guys think about this change to putting more rules on the War Scrolls? Ryan, let's start off with you.
Well, as a mostly Settlers Gain Coalition user of Lumineth, I'm really happy about it because it just meant my units just became more valuable. Like Shining Company I now get. So, yeah. And the Alarith units are really good. So I think it's cool. I also think in general, the less you have to know that's hidden behind a paywall for the app is really good. So now everyone can see the War Scrolls. So that just means it's a little bit less complicated for people who don't own the book and or have gotten the code.
Yeah, that's a great point. Siegfried?
Well, I think it's a huge quality of life, um, both for the uh, actual players of Lumineth, but also for their opponents because it's easier to keep track of things, and the whole Battletome feels much more streamlined.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's much easier for players new to Lumineth, especially if you're having to go through your book all the time just to remember all your rules, while now you have to remember two, and then you're just looking at the war scrolls. But yeah, okay. So the first one, it's you know it, you love it, or you probably hate it if you're not Lumineth. It's called Lightning Reactions. What it boils down to is after all units with strike first have fought, you actually get to pick 2 units to fight instead of 1 every time you're eligible to decide who fights. So that's quite nice. So every time one of your opponent's unit gets to go, you get to choose 2 units to go afterwards or before that. So that's pretty neat. Neither of them can have the strike loss effect, so that's important to note. And what changed from the last book is that it is now keywords blocked. So it's only for Lumineth units. It's no longer allowing allies to use it, which was iffy to begin with, to be fair. Anything you guys want to add here?
Back when we talked about the Ideneth allies thing, I was surprised by this too,
Yes.
that existed. And now that you guys have literally 4 times as much allies options now, if not more, if you want to consider Stormcast even bigger, considering how many models they have. I think it's totally fair.
Yes,
having Fulminators fight first, like you take Fulminators or a Storm Drake unit or something, and they get to fight along with your units, could be pretty crazy.
Yeah. I think I mentioned in Discord that I was only allowing it because we just had one ally who didn't even make sense to me as an ally, because Teclis kind of tried to commit a genocide on the IDK. But right now, as you mentioned, with all those extra allies, which is a huge quality of life change, this makes sense. Siegfried, anything to add, or are we moving on?
Yeah, I mean it should happen. It's no other army had that
that gimmick,
lawyer window to sneak in the allegiance abilities to the allies. And again, it was a thing of the edition, because on the second edition you couldn't do it. There was text that prevented such an I won't call it abuse, let's say it creative
creative rules reading. Yeah, it was a bit of min-maxing as rules as written, right? Rather than rules as intended. Yeah. Okay, moving on to the Aether Quartz, our last allegiance ability. So every Lumineth unit starts with an Aether Quartz reserve. This has also changed from non-keyworded to keyworded. All the rest has stayed the same, sort of. So you can still use it only once per phase, and you still subtract 1 bravery, which is a little bit on the pricey side if you're looking at all the war scrolls that lost any abilities to reduce bravery damage on our army. The benefits are the same, except for us losing one of those benefits. You can no longer cast an extra spell at the start of your hero phase, so that's gone now. Is that something that either of you are sad about, that it's gone? Ryan?
I mean, I think being able to cast an extra spell just was amazing, and that's really fun. Who doesn't want to be able to do that, especially when I guess Teclis couldn't use it, but you've got the Enlighteners already doing 2. You could buffer up with some stuff or whatever. That kind of seemed kind of cool, but I don't know. That seems like a bummer, but it probably is, a little bit of a nerf, and why not? Now the only magic thing is the rerolls. So, and at least it's a good reroll. Like you get to choose whether you're going to reroll or add +1, right? It's one or the other.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. You do it after it's already happened, which is, something. It gives you a little more freedom to choose.
Siegfried?
But that's always been how the rules played, right? Sorry.
Yeah. It's nothing new.
Okay, yeah.
Well, it's been a kind of a big tactical thing for us to have. because it gave you the opportunity to expand
Mm-hmm.
your choices and options, because sometimes a mage will be in a distant place, and there was a unit there that needed a buff, but you didn't have the second mage up close, so it gave some tactical choices. But at the same time, it created trouble because you had to announce it at the beginning of the hero phase,
Yeah.
um, which many people forgot to do
Yep.
so.
Yep.
And also, it wasn't such strong tactically as the one that gives you +1 to cast or the reroll, because on that, as Ryan mentioned, you got to do it after the roll,
Yeah.
so you can it's kind of genes, genes in a way, uh, but with the other rule you had to commit,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
that took off. It had a price if you
Yeah.
used it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of sad it's gone, to be honest. I saw in the Lumineth Discord that some people mentioned that they never used it, but I really strongly disagree with that. I use it a lot, actually. Maybe it's kind of changed now because you've got your 2 cast wizards. That's also decent, so it's not just the twins anymore. But I did still end up using it a lot, and I think especially with how difficult it has become to cast some of our stronger spells now, it's not just an added luxury. I really would have wished for them to keep this. But yeah, I do agree that having to use it at the start of your hero phase was something a lot of people forgot anyway. Okay, moving on to the sub-factions. So these have been trimmed down, to say the least. So obviously they lost all the artifacts bound to the sub-factions, all the commentaries bound to the sub-factions, but most of their effects have also been nerfed or at least simplified. So I think you really like these changes, Siegfried?
Yes. Well, uh, all the third edition Battletomes had this kind of trim down,
Yeah.
more or less. I think overall it's a win, because getting to choose your command trait and your artifact is, I believe, more important than perhaps some added benefits we had from the sub-factions. Now, some sub-factions, the rule they got is subpar, like
Yeah.
Lumnia or
Yeah,
Iliatha.
we'll get to that. Yeah. Yeah. Let's first go through all of them, and then afterwards I have this summary screen basically where we can discuss the strengths compared to the other sub-factions. So
If I could jump in real quick.
Yes.
Well, one thing, technically Tectonic Force is gone. So that didn't get moved to the War Scrolls. That's entirely gone now. So that was a battle trait, a general allegiance ability. And secondly, it's worth pointing out that unlike the Tzeentch book, a lot of the command traits and artifacts, not all of them, but a good chunk of them from the sub-factions that used to be there, have now been added to the choosable ones that you can modularly pick for your new armies, which is cool because some of them are actually pretty good, and now it doesn't feel so bad that the sub-factions lost them, and you just have more choice to support what Siegfried was just saying.
Yeah. So. Okay, so the Metrica trait is somewhat the same. So as Ryan mentioned, they lost Enduring as Rock, but the reason why you took it is still the same. So Metrica Alarith units treat Rend -1 and Rend -2 as Rend 0. So obviously without this trait, they only ignore -1 Rend. Being able to ignore -2 Rend as well is pretty nice. Do note, it doesn't lower the Rend of your opponent's weapons, it ignores -1 and -2. So -3 is still a flat out -3, and -4 is obviously still a flat out -4. It also unlocks Stone Guard as battle line. Moving on to Sayar. Friends...
Wait, can I make a quick point about that too?
Yeah.
Remember, a lot of people these days, especially with Purple Sun and spells like the Tzeentch spells that lower your save value, are like they like to casually say it's the same thing as Rend -4, but it's not. So in this particular case, Immetrica is actually coming out even better than we think of it, because the Purple Sun's -1 to save doesn't make the Ren better. The Ren -2 is still being ignored. You get what I mean? So in that particular case, you're ignoring 2 and then losing 1 for the Purple Sun, which is functionally only a -1, instead of what they might have said casually as it's Ren -3 and then -3 goes through. So it's still pretty strong in this meta where we see a lot of save debuffing.
Yeah, so, and especially now with more units having -1 rend, as in almost all units having -1 rend, it's actually ignoring a lot of stuff right now. Whereas before, it didn't really matter half the time, because most of the units didn't have rend, or very little of it at least. But yeah. Sire is somewhat the same still, so friendly Sire units start the battle with 2 Aether Quartz reserves instead of 1. I think this was probably the best faction when they were first released, the Lumineth Realm-Lords. And part of the reason why it was very strong was obviously because it had a massively impactful command trait, Goading Arrogance, which is now just gone. Anything you guys want to add before we move on?
Well, the thing with CR now is due to the complete disappearance of all our ways to mitigate bravery. Now it backfires. I mean, if you get -2 to your bravery on our 6 or 7 tops bravery units, it's really bad potentially.
So. Seeing as I'm not the Lumineth player of the 3 of you guys, I know the rules really well. I've had the last Battletome and now this one, and have analyzed it quite a bit. But at the same time, I don't have experience actually playing with these guys, and I'm curious how much this one ability itself really is good for you guys. Forgetting about the bravery thing, I was saying, I think it's good for the Lord Regent and Lyria Uthral, so that they maintain the purest Aether Quartz rule for a little bit longer. But how good is this really if you ignored the bravery thing? Is it like amazing that you get to use, or is it just kind of meh in your experience?
I think it was very good before, because Lumineth was also quite tanky with the innate -1 to hit with the Shining Company. Back in 2nd edition, there was no allied attack to balance that. So your units usually survived with the -1 and the +1 to save from Aether Quartz. You were actually quite tanky, and there was a big chance that you could still do it a second time with a unit. Nowadays, I feel whenever they're touching your units, they're probably killing it, unless it's a big Alarith creature. Is that the same experience that you've gotten, Siegfried?
Well, yes. Well, when the book first came, the first version of the first Battletome, it felt that we were really tanky. But as the edition changed and new Battletomes came out with better rend, more killy, it seems that yes, many of our units, even with Shining Company, even if you use all-out defense and the other chords, they still get chomped. I mean, I had like 2 fulminators charge my wardens, and I use an all-out defense and the crystal, and they still died. Or most of them. I mean, like 14 out of 20. So it was still really bad. The main boon of CR is that you get to have some quality in as the game goes on, because we are strong on the first 3 battle rounds, but as time goes on, and because it is an elite army, we can't play really well the attrition game. So having an extra Aether Quartz lets your units work in good quality for a longer time. But as I said, now as it is now, the extra -1 to bravery is like a death sentence at times.
Yeah, I think you'll probably be using the Sire buff on your heroes more than you're going to use it on your wardens, because or your normal troops, because being able to add +1 to your heroes casting twice is pretty nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Okay. Iliatha, the twin faction. So once per turn, you can say that 2 friendly Iliatha Vanari units will use their Aether Quartz reserves to use an Aether Quartz reserve ability in the same phase instead of only one. So basically, you're just allowed 1 extra Aether Quartz pop during your turns. This ability had the rerolls of 1 before, and then it was a command trait to allow you to use 2 Aether Quartz reserves. Now you just get to do 2. I'm not sure you're ever picking this, honestly, over all the other things. Do you guys think this is better than Syar?
Well, the funny thing is, this is actually the command ability from Syar previously. They just moved it over here. At least you don't have to spend a CP to do it. It's auto. Again, I would have the same question because I don't really know how valuable the Aether Quartz really plays out for you guys. Like, how often are you saying, I want to use 2 in one phase, but at the same time, you're going to burn through your supplies twice as fast. The other one doubles how long your supplies last, and this could functionally have it. So how much of a, Siegfried, you were just saying that it makes you last longer in terms of battle rounds. Wouldn't this speed everything up?
Correct. It will make you deplete your reserves quicker. But the thing is, it is not the same command ability, because on CR, on the old CR, any unit will do it. Now it's only Vanari units. So it's a worse version of the command ability, actually.
And you could do it on the same unit.
Yes.
Which was massive to keep your Teclis alive turn 1 against, let's say, 2 Rent, and you could effectively use 2 Quartz to ignore those 2 Rents. Now you have to use it on 2 separate Vanari units.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely a nerf.
I mean, I love the Iliatha lore, but it's rest in peace for Iliatha.
Yeah, this is really bad.
Competitively, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I also don't think it really embodies the lore of the faction anymore. So supposedly, I don't know whether you know the lore, Ryan, of Iliatha, but supposedly you've got all these twins, so they're actually really fond of cloning themselves. So they've all got these identical clones of themselves, and the thing is that they can kind of read each other's minds somewhat, and thus can work together much better than other units would. But I don't really feel that with this rule personally. It is as you say. You feel like this is something that should be added on top of the Syar subfaction ability, and Iliatha should just get something else. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's lazy rules writing.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Okay, moving on to Zytrek, probably one of the 2 favorites here. So add 1 to casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls for friendly Zytrek wizards. So it's all wizards in your army, as long as they're not allies, obviously. And opposed to the previous version, this is just now a constant bonus, whereas before it was just +1 to the first casting attempt, which is pretty big. But you did lose the extra spell on all of your hero wizards, and you lost the overwhelming heat spell on all of your wizards. So you kind of lost a lot, but you also gained a very nice static buff. This is what the Tzeentch army just gets, right?
If you're around a Lord of Change. But did you point out, I was a little distracted there. Did you point out that this no longer just affects the first spell, but all of them?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So that to me seems like a big deal, especially when you've got a 2-caster, or obviously Teclis can't use it because he can't be modified, right? This to me seemed like a really strong one, and there was a list I was toying around making with that new artifact that lets you add 1 to unbinding and dispelling for every scenario that's around. I did build a list that was like max deny, where you basically would never get any spells through. But I don't know if it was worth it, but I did find it kind of interesting. And you could give that extra dispel command trait to the Enlightener, so she's got 3 of those at that plus like 6 to unbind. So kind of cool. But this faction's super neat.
Yeah. Siegfried?
Well, I had thought of this combo too, but a not very not very expensive version, because you get +1 from Zytrek. You use the fast learner command trait to get an extra unbind, and you just put two more Scenari wizards, so all in all three, and you get +4 because you get +1 for the same
Yeah.
character, because it doesn't say other Scenari wizards,
Yeah.
the artifact. So you get +3 on unbind and another +1 from Zytrek, so you can have 3 unbinds on with a +4 modifier, of which two of which can be rerolled. One from the first learner and the second one from the shrine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah. Okay.
And I mean, Zytrek is crucial, I think, because if anything, our casting values went up. So and we didn't get any other true bonuses to casting.
Yeah.
So it's more crucial than before, I
Yeah,
believe,
I
Zytrek.
completely agree. It's almost mandatory, unless you're building a Alarith force, obviously. Okay, moving on to Alumnia, and they got a really big hit in this current edition. So all of your movement shenanigans with Alumnia are gone. The lore that you're just a very fast-moving nation is not even remotely present in your trait now. Sorry, Alumnia fans, I know there's a lot of you. So now your rule is basically an expert conqueror's rule, but instead of counting as 3, you're counting as 2. And you need to touch 2 or more base, so you basically have to be in Shining Company. If the base of each model in a friendly Alumnia Vanari unit is touching the base of 2 or more models in the same unit, each model in that unit that is within 6 inches of an objective counts as 2 models for the purpose of contesting an objective. So yeah, quite rough actually. It's only for Vanari units, you have to be in Shining Company, and you count as 2, it's not just 2 more, which would be amazing as Expert Conquerors, because then every Vanari model would count as 5, which might seem like overkill, but I feel like in this edition, it's almost something that you need to get in return for just getting deleted as a Vanari unit. What do you guys think of this trait?
Ryan, do you want to go?
I actually really like this one. I know that you guys are hurt from what you lost, but I am, especially someone who's playing in tournaments a lot and doesn't like taking GVs to get my expert conquerors. I think it's really cool with how you guys can kind of turn things off of being battle line. So you can have your Dawn Riders count as 2, which cavalry never gets to be. You can have your Blade Lords, who don't have to be battle line, therefore they don't have to take twice as much damage. Do this as well, and I think Blade Lords have gotten a bit of a shine up here in this book. Mm-hmm. And of course, you could do it with your Sentinels too, and just have them sit in the back without being expert conquerors and therefore Galician veterans. You don't have to turn them into battle line, and yet you can still benefit from this. And remember, that expert conquerors rule is probably going to fall off with the next GHB as expert conquerors. So I think you might be undervaluing. I wrote a whole list about increasing the number of bodies with the army, and I actually think this could be really cool. Yep. So I wouldn't undervalue it just yet. I know that it, by comparison to what it used to do, it's a shame, but I think this is a cool rule, actually.
It's a very cool rule, and I think it'll be massively impactful when the GV stuff is gone, because then we'll be unique with this rule. It's just that it doesn't really fit the theme of the Alumnia nation anymore. Siegfried, how do you feel about this faction?
Yeah, well, I loved the old Alumnia. I like the aggressiveness, and the lore is all about being aggressive and take the initiative. And well, this rule doesn't really reflect the lore, but I agree with Ryan that it has some value counting as 2 models. I don't know if it will be enough, because we don't have huge units, because it is an elite army still, and I don't know if we'll be going forward using huge units, with our low bravery. But I think when the new GHB comes, and perhaps Expert Conquerors lives, this will have some gas in the tank. Again, not as good as the top sub-factions we have, but it can potentially make for some interesting lists.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last one, and Ryan, you wrote a whole list for this nation, so I'm super looking forward to this one. Add 1 to the attacks of missile weapons used by friendly heal-on units while they are within 6 inches of any enemy units, and it also unlocks wind chargers as battle line. Now, if I can start off here, I just want to point out that it's not models within the 6, but just a unit. So if you conga line your sentinels, this is really going to hurt a lot.
Yep. I mean, I'm a cavalry elite fast kind of player, and I like this. Again, it's high risk, high reward, getting your units close. But adding 1 to the attacks means your sentinels double their output. It means your wind chargers increase by 50%. It also applies to the geomantic blasts of your big guys, the cows who want to be in combat. Now, you can't give it to Volinor because I think he's still key locked to Metrica, but you take some regular cows, it doubles their output, and they want to be up in combat. So that's kind of fun. Lyria Uthral, is he forced to be in Metrica so he can't take this keyword? Okay, that's too bad because he has a cool shooting attack. But in the wind chargers, you know, like obviously they can get up there, and then the foxes, and so what's the real boost here is that it's 6, not 3. You don't have to be in combat, which is cool. And if you can do enough damage, spiking damage right off the bat, you're good. Or on an Unleash Hell, you're everyone's qualifying because of 6. You're definitely within. So I actually think there's more juice to this than people might be thinking, and obviously I'll talk about it more in my list. I know everyone's butthurt about the what happened to the Wind Temple, and I'm really glad Alarith got way better because they clearly are the winners in this. But I think there's still some cool stuff that could happen with this, especially movement shenanigans wise. Yeah. So
you could actually just have a massive block of sentinels behind a very tiny but like stretched out screen of wardens. They'll have to charge the wardens. You'll be within 6 inches during their next turn. You get to shoot double, and then when they charge you get to shoot double again.
Yep.
Painful. Siegfried, anything to add before we move on to the summary?
Well, I believe that we may see some lists that will utilize MSU Sentinels units. Because if you have them in a formation that is 3-4-3, like a bubble, everyone gets to fire on Unleash Hell. So a unit may charge 10 sentinels, they will get 18 shots back.
Yeah,
so
but
it can be lethal, and you can also use the sentinels as a suicide units. Just put them front, go within 6 inches, shoot, and then charge and attack with their sun metal daggers they have now, which can add even more to their damage, and you don't care. It's only 150 points. So multiple MSU.
Only 150.
Maybe thing.
Yeah, and the other reason MSU is because they now want to be around another Sentinels unit, so they get the extra rank.
Yes.
So I think people are underestimating the Wind Temple stuff just because it got nerfed, but it was already kind of broken anyway. So at least with the foxes. So.
I mean, they hurt the Wind Temple, but that's not saying they hurt Helon. So I think this rule is actually way better than the one that they had before. The reason why anyone took Helon was because you had the command trait where you were allowed to move after the combat phase, which is obviously gone, and that's sad. But this rule really embodies the spirit of the great nation of Helon. So I think they really nailed this one, especially compared to, let's say, Iliatha and Alumnia, lore-wise at least. Okay, so if we're looking at the summary of these sub-factions, let's not get into every single one of them in detail because we're kind of on a tight schedule here as it is. But let's just say you're going to a tournament which ones are you considering and which ones are you definitely not considering? Ryan, let's start off with you as you are the tournament guy here.
I don't know. Siegfried might be the tournament guy too. Obviously, Metrica is awesome now. I would totally love to play it, and you got to love seeing a book getting more balanced internally that way. At least with one of the factions that got, they never really got enough love. And then Zytrek and Halon. Those are. But I do like Alumni, as I said. The only two I don't love are CR and Iliatha, but maybe it's because I don't really get what they're really bringing to the table.
Siegfried?
Well, I am a tournament player, but COVID really messed things up in Greece, so I haven't been in a tournament for like 2 years, but now I will be coming back. Now, regarding the sub-factions, well, the winners for me are Emetrica and Zytrek. Closely behind Helon, and Alumnia a bit more in the back, and CR and Iliatha are like never used.
I'm at the exact same spot.
Always.
I think
because I don't want people should play what they want, right?
Yeah.
But if you are going for a competitive list, Emetrica and Zytrek are the go-to, I think.
Yeah, it's also more than aesthetic bonuses. As you say, you basically win now by either being super aggressive or super tanky. And Emetrica is going to give you the tankiness, and Zytrek is going to give you the bigger guarantee on spells, so you can at least react aggressively or defend yourself with spells at least. So I think Zytrek is the number one go-to if you're not playing Alarith. Okay.
Yes.
Moving on to enhancements. So this usually takes a while. Let us just go over all the things that I've written down on the slides, and then we'll just talk about some of them. Do you guys find that agreeable?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Sure.
Okay. So starting off with the command traits, I gathered the favorites. So basically, what it means for this PowerPoint is you're always losing one from the total selection. So you get 3 for the Vanari, 3 for the Sonari. I've got 2 Vanari, 2 Sonari here. So Grand Strategists, it's for Vanari only. It's +1 to the roll for heroic leadership, which is pretty nice. And then we got Almighty Blow, also Vanari only. And when this general fights, instead of piling in and attacking, pick one enemy within 1 inch and roll a dice. On a 2+, you inflict d6 mortal wounds. This used to be a command trait that was bound to Emetrica, but it only inflicted d3 mortal wounds. So d6 is a nice change there, although you can still roll at juicy 1 on the 1 to hit or on the 1 to inflict mortal wounds. So there you have it. Do you want your general, your Vanari Lord Regent to get 2 chances to roll a 1, or do you choose anything else? Then for Sonari, you got the Lore Master. This general knows 2 extra spells from the Lore of Hysh. Now, ironically, in our Zinj review, this is in there as well, and we didn't think it was quite good there. But here, I think it really has some merit, but we'll get into that later. And then obviously the big one, the one that we kind of discussed before a little bit, is Fast Learner. So you can imbind 1 extra spell in the enemy hero phase. In addition, the second time you attempt to unbind a spell, you can reroll that unbinding roll, which was a command trait previously bound to Zytrek. Okay, favorites, guys? Ryan, let's just stick to the order. You go first.
Doesn't have to always be that way. Yeah, I found the heroic leadership one kind of meh. Unless, whatever. If you want more CPs, fine. Almighty Blow's interesting, especially if for some reason you put it on a banner blade. Because then he's like doing way more than he usually does. On the Lord Regent, he can put out some work if you weak enough target. But I'm Fast Learner is the one that really Johnnies me up. I like the option there, especially if you pair it with the other thing that we discussed earlier, the artifact.
Yeah, I love that expression, Johnnies me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Siegfried, which one do you prefer?
Fast Learner for sure. Anything Vanari from command traits and artifacts is subpar. Fortunately, it was as such, and it still is. But I also think Lore Master can have some merit in certain lists. But again, both of these have to compete with Master of Magic, which is tough.
Exactly. You'll notice in the list that I'm running, it's a Vanari list. I'm not running any of these. I went with the Master of Magic, which is sad, to be honest, but that's a whole different story. Okay, so moving on to the Wind Mage and Stone Mage command traits. So the Wind Mage, you can add 3 to the general's move characteristic for Swift, or with Swift rather, which can be nice if you're just running your Wind Mage as a transporting vortex spell caddy and you want to get into range the turn before. But it's probably not hugely impactful. Then you've got Gravity Defying. Once per battle you can reroll 1 run roll, 1 charge roll, and 1 casting roll for this general, which was bound to Helon before as a Grand Master Champion, Grand Race Champion or something. For the Stone Mage though, this is where the juiciness comes in if you're running Alarith. You can add 3 to your general's wound characteristic, and I think Siegfried, you took this one for your list. And then
Correct.
you also got the Unyielding Toughness, which was all the hype in the Discord. At the start of the hero phase, pick 1 Stone Guard unit wholly within 6 inches. Add 1 to their wound characteristic until your next hero phase, which feels like a Nurgle kind of vibe here, with the Rancid Visitations or whatever it's called. Since Ryan was right and it doesn't have to always be the same order, Secret, which one is your favorite?
Well, anything wind is not very good, unfortunately. I mean, if you add 3 inches, it already goes 16 inches with fly. I mean, 19 is an overkill. And once per battle things are not that great anyways. So, first of all, many people were enthusiastic about Unyielding Toughness. I'm not such a fan because wholly within 6 inches is so very much restrictive, and it's on the hero phase. I mean, think about it, how many times apart perhaps from the first engagement will you manage to have a unit of, let's say, 10 Stone Guard? Let's not go to 15, let's go for 10 Stone Guard wholly within 6 inches in the hero phase from the Stone Mage, without having to compromise on your strategy and tactics, getting objectives and charging when you need to go and going where you need to go. So I believe this is kind of a trap, because many people that will use it in order to keep the bonus will end up making bad choices.
Yep.
While the Enduring one, paired with the fact that the Stone Mage now has a 4-up save instead of a 5-up, which on first sight it doesn't look like much, but when you ignore -2 rend and you have a 4-up save, that means that your mage can have 8 wounds and just with an all-out defense have save on a 3-up, ignoring -2 rend, which is a big deal.
Yeah,
it makes him very tough.
Especially since it's gotten way more important synergy-wise, and you really want to keep your Stone Mages alive.
Yeah. So I'm gonna throw a little devil's advocate juice out here. And first off, Jonas, I picked the 2 artifacts that are 2 command traits of both of these that you didn't choose. And second, unyielding toughness. Imagine that you put your Stone Mage in the shrine, and now you're projecting a wholly within 6 from a much bigger footprint, which does increase the amount of people you can put in there, especially if for some reason you need to protect that area. So that's not as bad as maybe it looks. You can also put him in the Sanctum of Amuntalk, which no one ever talks about, but you put him in there and it's projecting off of that, which is much bigger as well. So I actually think there's some juice there, and it's simultaneously protecting the guy. But that's just playing devil's advocate. The 2 choices that I would actually pick here, I really like the command trait for the Wind Mage that gives him a 24-inch bubble of giving the flying and +2-inch movement characteristic to the Wind Chargers. As you'll see that I've used that. I like that kind of thing, a static ability that has a huge window, especially again if you put him in the shrine that I was talking about, or inside the sanctum,
Yeah.
it's even bigger. And then secondly, about the this is more for my Helon list, but if you use the command trait Tectonically Attuned that lets you shoot the Geomantic Blast with 1 extra attack, and you put him in Helon, and then he's standing up close, he's getting 3 times the shooting output, plus he's still Cow, and he's doing a whole lot of stuff. So I actually think there's some use for the 2 that didn't get mentioned here, and that boosting those bubbles is a thing that we could consider. I'm not saying being stuck in place with the Sanctum or being stuck in the Garrison is the way to go, but I can imagine way worse things to get than doing those. So.
Yeah, you make a very fair point about the Wind Mage command traits. I was actually very... I wasn't sure whether I was going to leave the one out that you prefer, and the reason I did is because I just don't think you'll play Hurakan if you want to win, which is, I know, a bold statement. So that's why I did not include it, because I imagine most Wind Mages that are going to be in lists are not going to be combined with the Wind Charge, which is why I left it out. But if you're running Wind Charge, by all means, take the one that I left out, because it used to bother me so much back in the day when I ran Wind Chargers that it was so difficult to keep them in that small bubble. And now it's a 24-inch bubble, if I recall correctly, which is massive. And as you mentioned, if you put them in the shrine, it's almost a whole board. So,
right.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, the only way in Lumineth to get a non-GV list, an entirely GV free list, is to go Wind Chargers.
Yeah.
It's literally the only way to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm always thinking about doing that. Plus, I really like cavalry armies, and I think they're pretty good as skirmish units. So, and remember, now that War Scroll ignores ward saves. So against someone like Nurgle, that could actually be pretty good if you stack all the right stuff on them. So I don't know. I wouldn't count them out just yet. The speed, movement wins games, and adding more movement, and especially when choosing between these other 2. Adding 3-inch to his movement, okay, but like getting to reroll 1 run roll for the guy, all right, 1 charge roll, he doesn't want to be in combat, and 1 casting roll, all right, that's pretty good. Yeah. But it's only once per battle. I don't know. I'm usually a big fan of static buffs, if possible.
Yeah, you might be right there. I should probably have swapped the Swift for the whatever it's called. Yeah.
Just make it.
Yeah. Moving on to artifacts. So again, Vanari Scenari artifacts here. So you've got the Sayari Pommel. The bearer starts the battle with 1 extra Aether Cord. So if you really love your Aether Quartz reserves, you can use Sayar and this Pommel, and your general will have, or your hero will have 3 reserves. Yay! I think the only time that you'll ever see this is maybe on a Vanari Lord region, because he gets -1 to hit innately as long as you have an Aether Quartz reserve. So I think this extra one is kind of nice, but still doubtful. The Waystone was a Alumnia artifact. It's also Vanari only. Once in your movement phase, instead of making a normal move, set up this unit within 13 inches and more than, that should be 9 inches away from enemy units. You might be wondering why it's 13 inches. So the book states you choose a point within 12 inches and then you deploy within 1 inch of that point. So it's basically 13 inches. But that 3 should definitely be a 9, because otherwise that would be amazing. Silver Wand is a scenario one. So the bearer can attempt to cast 1 extra spell in your hero phase, which is our Arcane Tome. A little bit less strong, but still pretty good. And then the Rune of Senthoi, and this is where we get really techy, really Johnny-like, as Ryan would say. So add 1 to Unbinding and Dispelling rolls for the bearer for each friendly Scenari hero within 6 inches of the bearer. So this means, I read this wrong initially, so this means for each Scenari hero that is within 6 inches of that guy that has this artifact, they get +1 to the Unbind. So if it's a Scenari hero themselves, they already get +1 from themselves, obviously. And let's say you've got 2 other Scenari heroes close by, you get +3 total. I'm not wrong about the Waystone, am I, guys? It is 9 inches away, right?
The Waystone is 3 inches away.
Oh, so it wasn't a typo.
No, it's 3. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Which is why it's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Siegfried, you went first last time. Ryan, I think I already know which one you are going to pick.
Well, of the two Vanari ones, definitely the Waystone. I like that. I mean, I wish it was more, but the fact that you're getting that move, and then you can move instead of not make. So then you just charge. So now you're within 3, and you've got a guaranteed charge. Now that said, does your Lord Regent really want to do that? Maybe not, or maybe you're not using it to get closer to the enemy. You're doing it to get away. That could be a thing too. And then I like all the Scenari ones actually, but and I do like Runa Synthoi the most. But I actually am going to throw my ballot or my vote in for Phoenix Stone because bringing back Teclis after he dies on a 3-up is not the worst thing in the world. Bringing back it works on any Lumineth Realm-Lords hero within 12 inches, not wholly within. So bringing back a Valinor, I mean, I think there's some cool things you might want to do, and a 3-up bringing back is decent, you know. Consider what you have to do to bring Alariel back. You have to time it just right and based off the battle round. Yeah, this isn't that different. I mean, yeah, it's only D3 wounds back, but that can make a difference between getting to use Teclis in another hero phase again.
Yeah, for Teclis, that's definitely big. Yeah. Cool. I love how you. I think it's almost always been the case where when it's not blatantly obvious, you usually have a different pick than the ones that I include, which I kind of love actually. I'm starting to get very fond of it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I promise I'm not trying to be a contrarian. I actually think the things I mentioned are cool.
Yeah, and that's why I love it, because it's just such a different way of looking at things. Siegfried, are you more in line with the way I looked at this, or do you also have a different preferred artifact?
Well, regarding the Vanari artifacts, I believe they're crap. To be blunt, you know, the Waystone, it's not good. I mean, the Lord Regent can move 14 inches on his own, and the Banner Blade, okay, he can run 6 inches. I mean, it's okay. It's like Fly. You may ignore some units and set up 3 inches away, but I mean, I wouldn't waste an artifact slot for this thing.
Yeah.
That's fair.
It would be really. Go ahead.
If it was farther, if it was 18 inches, yes, we will be talking then. But now it's, I mean, you will get 1 or 2 inches more instead of running just 6 with a CP. It's not worth it in my opinion, at least. Now regarding the Scenari ones, I think Rune of Synthoi is great, as we already mentioned, and maybe the only way for us to be really anti-magic without having to rely on Teclis to do the heavy lifting. But I will agree with Ryan. My pick will be the Phoenix Stone, and it is an artifact that I was contemplating using in my list that I was creating for today, because having a huge piece like Valinor or Teclis or even Sevireth, if someone is so inclined to include in his list, is a huge thing, and it's D3+1 actually, because it says on the rule that when your character is about to receive a wound that would kill him, so he's on 1 wound, you activate the artifact, and on a 3-up he heals D3. That wound is ignored, and every other wound. So your model will have D3+1 wounds left, which, I mean, it's not that much, but I mean, if you roll a 5-up, it's 4 wounds, and on a Valinor is no small deal.
Yeah,
it will be quite good.
And if you got a Stone Mage around, he's still fighting on top bracket. So
right,
yeah,
that's a good point. Okay, I think I will probably run Silver Wand more than anything else, because I'm picking to be fair, I'm picking Arcane Tome over any of these. Usually, I think the Rune of Synthoi is really cool, but then also if you want to get that +3, let's say, you're paying for 3 Scenari heroes that need to stick together within 6 inches. That's not a lot of movement, so I'm not actually sure how often you would ever run this, but I like the silver one because I keep hoping that they're getting rid of the Arcane Tome. And then we'll still have the ability to cast an extra spell, which is amazing. Okay, let's move on to the Stone Mage and Wind Mage artifacts. So, just to be honest here, I think we can all agree that the Wind Mage artifacts are pretty meh, to say the least.
Yep.
Yeah. So the Wind Blast fan, once at the start of the movement phase, pick one enemy unit within 3 inches. That unit must retreat. It's okay, but would you ever pick that over all the other artifacts that you can choose? You also got the Wind Stone. Once in your shooting phase, pick one enemy unit within 18 inches. Roll a dice. On a 1, inflict 1 mortal wound. On a 2 to 4, inflict 2 mortal wounds. And on a 5, inflict 4 mortal wounds. This is actually one that I quite liked, combined with potentially the Arcane Bolt. Because it gives me the feeling that you had when you were trying to lantern a hero with a high warden and then Arcane Bolt him. This is the kind of same vibe that I get, but I really dislike abilities where your results are tied to 1d6 unlucky or lucky roll. So not a huge fan. Moving on to the Stone Mage artifacts, the Heartstone Amulet. The bearer has a 4+ ward against mortal wounds, which is pretty cool. And then the Molten Talisman. Here we go. Add 1 to wound rolls for melee attacks made by friendly Alarith units, so also cows, not only Stone Guard. Wholly within 12 inches of the bearer if the bearer did not charge in the same turn. Ryan, favorites?
Well, I went last time. Siegfried.
Okay.
Well, Molten Talisman, I think, is pure gold.
Yes.
Because it can buff a Valinor.
Yep.
Because he wounds on a 3-up. And I mean, you won't be charging with your Stone Mage, that's for sure. And you can just run him 6, or I mean D6 if you think it's enough. You can run him behind the Stone Guard and or a Valinor to give them the buff. I think it's nice. It's passive. Don't need to roll anything. It's not one use, so it has all these things going for it. And I would like to make honorable mention for the Wind Blast fan. It's really situational, but if you opt for having allies Etherwings, for example, you can charge a shooting unit of the enemy with the Etherwings, get the Unleash Hell, then charge with the Wind Mages, and make them retreat on the following turn and lose a round of shooting. Of course, that has value only in big shooting units, bow snakes, and such things. That I mean, not bow snakes, because they can shoot in a hero phase, but for the long strikes,
yeah,
it can be useful. But again, you won't waste an artifact slot for this thing.
Yeah, just something.
Wait. You go, Jonas. Go ahead.
Okay, just something I want to mention on top of the Molten Talisman. This is why I would choose Enduring as a command trait over the other one that gives Stone Guard an extra wound, because this buff is so crucial in a Lumineth Alarith force, because there is no way in this book to add +1 to your wound rolls. Nowhere. So this is the only buff that you're ever going to get, and wholly within 12 is doable. But that also, I mean, everyone's going to know that you want to keep your Stone Mage alive because of this ability. So having those 3 extra wounds to keep this ability in the game is why I would choose Enduring over the whatever it's called. So yeah, that's something I would like to add on top of the Molten Talisman. Ryan, your thoughts?
So quickly about the Wind Blast fan. It's the start of the enemy movement phase, not your own, so it's not both. And then the other thing about that is the timing of that means, like you said, you have to be in combat. And the way I look at it is your Wind Mage, who's not tough, has to survive a whole round of combat for this to have been true.
Yeah.
And it has to be the enemy turn, so it's going to discourage you from taking a double turn, of course. And then all it's doing is making them retreat right then and there. In their turn, right? So, like you said, they're not going to be able to shoot. That's cool. I just feel like the timing of this, it's really situational based off if your dude can survive. And if you did charge in to try, and it was a weak archer unit or something like that, maybe you get lucky and they're not a big block that can all be Galician veterans and attack in 2 ranks or whatever. But I have a feeling that Wind Mage is not going to stick around too long. So I thought it was a really cool rule until I realized what the timing of it had to be. Yeah. Maybe there is a good situational use there. And it's 3 inches, so maybe you can stay outside of their pile-in range if that unit of either wings or whoever is big enough to avoid that happening. But I don't know. I feel like it's too situational.
Even if it wasn't once per battle, I still don't think I would ever pick it.
Yeah. Windstone also got nerfed. On 2 to 4, it used to be 3. On a 5-up, it used to be 6, which could have been interesting. Definitely a fan of the Molten Talisman. There's not really much else to say about that. And then a Ward Against Mortal Wounds is cool too. The Arcane Bolt one that you didn't mention is okay, but whatever. So in general, I agree with you guys on these things. I think the real artifacts you're going for are this Stone Mage one, really.
Yeah.
And then maybe something from the other ones.
Just a quick note, the Windstone wasn't 6 mortal wounds, it was D6. So it was either 3 or D6.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't 6, unfortunately. But now it's better, because I think 4 it's better than D6.
Yeah.
But still, it's not that great. Still unreliable.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree. That is worse.
Okay, moving on to spells. So before we get into this, this is probably where our army took the biggest hits, apart from the foxes losing their enemy shooting phase movement. So we lost Lambent Light, which everybody expected, so no longer can you reroll your missile shots. And the Overwhelming Heat spell took its place. Other than that, most things have stayed the same for the Lore of Hysh, but the other lores for the temples have been reduced to 3 spells each, and not all of those 3 spells are useful. So this is going to be the painful part, I think. But let's dive right in, and after every spell, if you guys want to add something, feel free to do so. So the first one is kind of a Lumineth staple, I think. If you would remove this spell from the lore, Lumineth would probably be almost unplayable. It's still a meager 5+ to cast, which is very doable, wholly within 18 inches, and you can double the movement characteristic of one Lumineth Realm-Lords unit, which is amazing on almost all units. Thoughts?
Agreed. It's arguably the best spell of the lore.
Yeah, I agree.
In my opinion.
I don't think I would ever build a list that doesn't include this spell. Would you?
Yeah,
Ryan?
it's a cheap casting value. I like speed in general and movement, and doubling something is super cool. Yeah. So, also, if for some reason you guys have 2 ways, I think, to have movement in your book.
Yeah.
Which means that you guys really should consider using Ravenak's Gnashing Jaws. This is the opposite. It's the anti-Ravenak's Gnashing Jaws thing. So if you can double your move characteristic, then that unit's more or less safe entirely from getting hit with that, if someone were using it.
I think we have 1 thing to have movement and 2 spells to restrict movement. But not have it.
I could have sworn there was another one, but we can move on.
There was in the old Battletome.
Yeah.
It's one of the axed spells of Mountain Lore.
Mm-hmm. Okay, moving on to Solar Flare.
No, I'm sorry. That's wrong. It's the spell on the Stone Mage. So we do have 2 spells still.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. And the Stone Mage
direction.
So yeah.
Yeah, great catch there, Ryan. Jeez.
Well, I literally did a side-by-side of everything in the book. I missed that DC in the last thing, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Solar Flare, so casting value of 8, which is rough. I really wish they had increased the range here, because 10 is... I don't really see that. Why is it 10? I don't know. You can dispel an endless spell if you pick the point that's on an endless spell, or if there is a unit there, you get to roll a number of dice equal to the models in that unit, and for each 6 it inflicts a mortal wound. So this is your Horde Clearer spell, and that's quite kind to say, let's put it that way. I think I put a lot of stock in this spell right when the new GHB came out, but now with us all avoiding hordes all of a sudden, I think this spell lost some flair. Okay.
Well, the big thing you're missing out is the -2 bubble to casting, dispelling, and unbinding. That's a huge nerf to this.
Yeah.
That honestly, I think that's worth more than that. As someone who's played with anti-horde magic for a while in multiple armies, this is okay. But the real benefit of that thing was the -2.
Yeah.
So
I think the reason why I'm not that bummed about it is because you were also in that bubble. So to be in range for that spell, you also had to be within the range of the -2 to hit to cast, and it applied to your wizards as well.
Sure, but if one of those wizards is just
just a caddy for this spell, or just Dawn Riders,
or yes, exactly, someone who you don't care about doing the next spell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Cool.
Sure.
So protection of Fish, casting value of 8, range 9 inches, so that's remained the same. All units wholly within the cast within range of the caster get a 5+ ward. This cannot be combined with protection of Teclis. So the only thing that has changed with this spell is it has lost the Lumineth keyword. So you can use this one on allies, but sadly for you, Ryan, and I know you really love that combo, protection of Teclis has been keyworded now.
Yeah. I knew that. I've missed this part somehow.
Yeah. So this one you can still use on allies, which is nice. I think it's still a very strong spell, but the casting value of 8 again is quite high. It's suitable for this kind of strength, but it's still not easy to get.
It should be 12 inches, the range for an 8 casting value.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sylvaneth get one with a 7 casting value, with a 12-inch range. I think it's on the Lady of Vines, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It should be 12 inches range. I mean, it's really tough sometimes to fit the units in. Now regarding the ally thing, well, let's say that I may have used it on allied units in the past because I thought it wasn't keyworded.
No, I'm looking at it right now. You're right. It just said friendly before. It doesn't say Lumineth.
Yeah.
No, I mean I'm talking about the old version. So
it's remained the same.
Yeah. This is not a
cool.
change.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's cool. So I didn't cheat. That's nice.
Okay, moving on to a big spell that's in the lore here. So casting value of 7, which is doable, and a range of 24. Pick one enemy unit wholly within range, half the move characteristic of that unit until your next hero phase, which is probably the reason why you take this spell, but then you also get to roll a dice, and if the roll is equal to or greater than that unit's save characteristic, it inflicts D3 mortal wounds. So you actually want to, if you're looking for damage, you want a good save to use this on. This was usually tied to Zytrek before, and now it's just a spell that's in the lore of Fish. I actually quite like it in the lore of Fish because halving the movement is very strong. Impressions?
Agreed. It's a great spell. I usually forgot about it when I played with Zytrek in the past, because it was the extra spell. But now that you choose the spell for a specific wizard, I think it will stick much better.
Yeah, it feels different
in my mind.
It feels different. I agree.
It's great because you pick a huge monster hero, which they usually have a 3-up save. And you will most likely do D3 mortal wounds and half the move, which will be devastating. I mean, even if it has a 14 inches and fly, having 7 suddenly is like an infantry. It may save you a whole turn of pain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The one thing to keep in mind, though, for those that are salty, is that this is the spell that replaced Lambent Light. So, in a sense, I could see someone being kind of sad about that, but no, I think it's well.
Is that an argument to feel worse or better, Ryan?
Either way, whichever way you want to look at it. So,
yeah. If you're a Lumineth player, probably worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to Ethereal Blessing, which is a spell that when I first read it, when the book first came out, I thought it was pretty great. So back in second edition. but I've actually never used it once in 3rd edition because I just don't really see a reason for it. So if any of you like it, please convince me. So it has a casting value of 6, range of 18 inches. Pick one LRL unit wholly within range until your next hero phase. Is that your next hero phase or the next hero phase? Did I type that wrong here?
Your next hero phase.
Your next hero phase. Okay, that's way better. Ignore modifiers, positive and negative. That's important when making save rolls against attacks for that unit. So Ryan, as a non-Lumineth, not dedicated Lumineth player, would you like this spell in a different force, and do you like it in Lumineth?
I mean, it depends on how much rend that you're expecting to go up against next turn. So being and whether not being able to use all out defense makes a difference for you. Like maybe you don't have CPs left, maybe you like your general's dead and you have low CPs, or you can't get Mystic Shield out because something else is more important. This would make a difference, but it's situational. And now that we know that Techless may or may not actually know the whole lore, you're gonna have to choose this spell. So we're waiting on that FAQ, I guess. But in the meantime, I would say it's really situational and depends on who you're going up against.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I agree because I mean, even on a 3-up save, if there is a volume of attacks, you will roll those 1s or 2s. It's really helpful if you face a -3 rend or any such extreme rend, and then it will have value also on a 4-up save unit. But all in all, again, will you pick this over protection of his or speed of his or overwhelming hit or total eclipse? No, probably not.
Exactly. Okay, speaking of which, total eclipse. So we were all surprised, I think, as a Lumineth community, that the spell remains the same except for its casting value, which is a huge change, by the way. But the spell, the effect is still the same. So until your next hero phase, your opponent must spend 2 command points to issue a command instead of 1. I fully expect this to change to the first time your opponent uses a command, it costs 2 instead of 1. So that's fully what I expected. But now it's still the same, but the casting value is 9, which is, oof. I mean, Ryan, you're the math guy. Do you know by heart what percentage that is?
Give me a second, and I'll be there. But what's it called? I think it's a fair thing, and now that you guys can, all the scenario heroes can all pop out a 9 pretty easily once per game, it's not totally off the table, but obviously it's more of a techless thing. So on a 2d6, getting a 9 up is a 28% chance, but if you're being contested, meaning someone else has an unbind, then it's a where is it? So here's the contested. It goes down to a 25% chance. So and that's assuming no one has pluses to unbind or anything like that. What you're really going to want is your cogs. So if you've got cogs going on around this or some other way to reroll, then we're looking at, it goes up to a 48% chance. So it goes up 20 percentage points, which is a big deal. So depends on how important this is, but obviously it can be super critical.
Yeah. Siegfried? I already know what you think.
Yeah, I think it's a huge difference because in the past you could have it on Zytrek. So with +1 you needed to roll a 7, and then you had a reroll perhaps from the shrine or from the Ether Quartz, or you could use the Ether Quartz to add another +1. So even if you rolled the 6, you still had the chance to get the casting value. Now on a 9, I think it is way big of a deal. Even in Zytrek, it will be difficult, and you know there is the
deep
thinkers, but still I don't want to be locked in having to use the deep thinkers for this spell, or having to have this spell multiple times on multiple wizards in order for each one of them to use their deep thinker ability, so I can cast it every turn.
Yeah.
And there is another thing. As the new battle tomes have arrived, there are ways for armies to get more CPs. Seraphon get more CPs like candy. Um, the Ossiarch Bone Reapers ignore the spell all in all. Stormcast with Bastion have ways, and there are other abilities that give armies a way to either use a command ability for free or get some extra CP. Or so I found that it's not for one third of the armies not that impactful anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure now with a casting value of 9 that I want to lean on this spell.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. You took the words right out of my mouth. I think the only you're either picking it on one wizard and you don't really care whether it succeeds or not, or you're picking it as a second spell when you choose to do so with the second enhancement from the Warlords Battalion, for example. But really focusing on this spell as you did before, I don't think it'll in Dutch we have this beautiful expression to say this, but I'll just do it like it won't reward you as much as it would before. Okay,
Yes.
We kind of have to pick up the pace a little bit here, looking at our clock. So, the Lore of the Winds. Yikes! So only 3 spells left. To be fair, 2 of them are really good. Healing Zephyr is terribly bad, and I don't really know why they nerfed it again, or why they nerfed it at all, because it wasn't that strong before anyway, but there it is. So, Howling Gale, casting value of 8, range of 12 inches. You pick one enemy unit within range. That unit cannot issue or receive commands until your next hero phase, which is big. If you listen to our Zinch review, Zinch have this spell, Arcane Suggestion, where this is one of the effects of the 3 that you can choose. And I love that spell specifically for this effect, so I also love Howling Gale a lot. Ryan, I think you took this one in your list, right?
Yeah, I think if you're going to play aggressively, you kind of need this.
Yeah.
Make sure your units survive a little bit longer. And again, like I said in the last review, if you put this on the Mega Boss on Maw Crusher, it's doing so much work. So obviously the problem is the range. So
yeah,
you're going to need to get up close or portal it through.
You'd think for a lore that's bound to winds, that the spells would carry further, right?
Sure.
For sure. I mean, there is another nerf on this spell too. It had a casting value of 7. Now it's on an 8. I mean, it's adding insult to injury.
Yeah.
And the 12 range is so short for a squeezy mage. I mean, it should be, especially with an 8 casting value, an 18 range. I mean, it's too short. You have to use a spell portal because you have to get your mage within 12 inches and have him survive until your next hero phase, in which you will be able to cast the Howling Gale. Or you will have to use it otherwise defensively if you castle and have him behind your lines. But again, it needs time to activate and do its work without spell portal, and I'm not sure it's worth the extra 70 points of the spell portal to use this. It still has good value for Teclis, because if you use Teclis, you will probably have the spell mirror, and then he can have some good value with Howling Gale, but only for Teclis, I think.
Yeah. Okay, I agree. I think this spell was once written for a Hurakan faction that had a battalion where they could always pile in after they moved, so they could pile in or move 6 inches on top of their movements every time. So that's really cool in that case, but yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Increasing the casting value, I don't really see why they bothered with that. Healing Zephyr, I think we can skip over this one. So casting value of 6, which is ridiculously high for the meager effect that you get. So a range of 18, pick an LRL unit wholly within the range. You can heal up to D3 wounds to that unit. it lost its effect of making you immune to bravery, which was the only reason why you would ever take it, and it was called Calming Zephyr back then. I don't really see a reason why you would take this now. Do any of you guys do?
I mean, healing's always good, but it's the spell. I'd rather them have kept guiding flurries, which helped the shooting unit.
Yes, exactly. So. And they could have keyworded that spell to Hurakan units, which helps the Wind Riders a ton.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, I think Siegfried, you agree with me, and we can move on to the Vortex.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so the Vortex is still a high value spell, so casting value of 8, range of 12 inches, pick one unit wholly within range, remove that unit and set it up again more than 9 inches away from all enemy units. That unit cannot move in the next movement phase. So it's a teleport that you know and love, the Deep Strike. It is still probably the reason why you would take a Wind Mage outside of a Hurakan focused build, because it is just still very strong. Anything?
The one thing I really wish this did was that you could move. I obviously everyone wants that, but what this would really do for Helon now is I could teleport a unit of Sentinels over and then get them within 6 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And all I would need is to get one model within 6 inches, and then all of a sudden I'm getting the buff.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. Like if it said outside of 5, like because honestly, how many of your units? Like let's say it said just shooting units can do this outside of 5. That would have been such a cool combo, but it would have been such a niche-y thing. And I thought about using Bridge too, but obviously it has the same problem that you can't move. So it is what it is. I get they're doing it to keep melee units from getting in, but if it was a shooting unit, they suck in melee, and so they don't. That's actually bad for them to get closer. Usually, it's a higher risk reward kind of thing, and that could have just been fun.
To be fair, I think this spell was mostly used on ranged units and especially Sentinels because people just wanted to use that spell to reposition them, because you can get them out of combat during your hero phase and then they don't count as having retreated. You could still shoot with your 30 Sentinels.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed. The only other unit that I have used it in the past is Light of Eltharion, because he's so slow, and I was
right?
Okay. It's better to have a 9-inch charge than no charge at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, it was a last-ditch effort.
Yeah.
The main target was always a unit of Sentinels.
Yeah. All in all, I just wish they had put in some more effects for Hurakan's unit specifically. Wouldn't it be so cool if you had like all the spells do a simple effect, but then if it's used on a temple specific unit, you get an extra bonus because it is temple magic? That would be so cool. But yeah.
Fluffy.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the Alarith magic, and this lore has actually been trimmed down as well, but they just kept all the good stuff except for Voice of the Mountains, which really hurts me. But that's as Ryan once said, I wonder how all the Lumineth players are going to react to negative changes, and it's kind of how he predicted it would be. And I've noticed that I'm not free of the blame there. So anyway, let's stay positive. Unbreakable Stoicism, which is amazing. Casting value of 7, range 12 inches. Pick one friendly Stone Guard unit. So this is a Alarith specific spell. Wholly within range. Until your next hero phase, that unit's crushing blow ability causes mortal wounds on an unmodified hit of 5 instead of 6. For those that don't know, Stone Guard now have an extra ability that causes mortal wounds on a 6 in addition to normal damage. So it's not the same as some melee weapons, it's actually way better. And this triggers it on a 5, which is amazing.
And it's an upgrade because you used to get an ability, similar ability, on one of the 2 weapon options. Now the weapon options have been folded into one another, so they're just the same profile regardless of what you do, which is great. Mm-hmm. So this is a fantastic spell.
Yeah.
Yeah, A+.
Yeah, I think for this spell only, I would, if I was running a Alarith-centric list, I don't remember how many of these you took, Siegfried, but if you're running 2 Stone Mages, I would probably take Unbreakable Stoicism on both of them. Just to be sure. Just to be sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Agreed.
Crippling Vertigo, casting value of 6, range of 18 inches. Pick one enemy unit within range. Until your next hero phase, roll 2d6 before that unit makes a normal move. it runs, it retreats, makes a charge move or a pilot move. If the roll is greater than the unit's bravery, it cannot make that move. So it basically has to pass a bravery check, and if it fails, it just can't do that move, which is fantastic. I think it's a really good spell. I think the question will be, is it better than Unbreakable Stoicism, right? And is it better than the Spell of the Cathaller?
It also got double buffed. It used to be Holy Within, and now it's just Within. And it used to say normal move in 2nd edition parlance, which meant it didn't include retreats and runs, but then they added this in. So I know in 2nd edition it meant that, but then as soon as 3rd edition kicked in, it was interpreted as just strictly a normal move, so it got that back. So in a sense, for what you've been doing in 3rd edition, it got that buff as well.
Yeah. Siegfried?
Huge quality of life change. Not having the unit to be wholly within 18 inches, because before it was really tough to have an enemy unit wholly within 18 inches, and that meant that your stone mates may have needed to be too close for comfort to actually utilize the spell.
Yeah, this is a very good spell. Okay, Living Fissure. Cast melee of 7, range of 18 inches. You pick a point on the battlefield within range and draw a straight line from the caster to that point. Roll a dice for each unit the line passes over. On a 2+, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. It's not bad. It is way better than the previous iteration of this spell. I think I would actually enjoy using this now, especially as Teclis, because I don't think I would ever take you on a Stone Mage. But as Teclis, sometimes you're in this situation where you're like, I need to deal extra mortal wounds. And then this spell would actually do some work. 18 inches, because I think it was 12 inches, right, Ryan?
9.
Double. It was 9, yeah.
Jesus. That is pretty big, right?
Yeah. The casting value went up 1, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so now for the last part. We're going to cover some of the War Scrolls, and also, Siegfried, you did some stats hammering. Ryan, you looked it over, and there were some small errors in some of the calculations you mentioned, but we're still going to use it as a rough comparison to make it easier to talk about values when we're comparing units.
Well, my math is not by any means perfect, and I will explain some ways that I try to emulate certain abilities. So the stats may not translate 100% math-wise.
Yeah.
So they were in the neighborhood for sure. And if you were using an app or a website, a lot of times those are harder to, like you said, get all of the abilities to do what they actually should be doing, because they're not built for every single unit. The one thing that we'll see coming up, if it comes up, I don't know if we will before I have to go, but is that anytime I do shooting and try to compare things that have shooting versus things that don't, I always count the shooting output as half, because you only get 1 shooting phase for every 2 melee combat phases. So I always discount shooting 50%. So let's say you could do D6 mortal wounds, that comes out to 3.5, but then you have to have it to get it to be at 1.75 to be a fair comparison against units that don't have shooting. I suppose if you're comparing only units that shoot, then it would be fine to count it either way, but it might not necessarily be reflective of how many times you're going to get to do it. So sometimes it can be a little deceptive. Shooting units are hard to compare to melee units anyway. So that's just my 2 cents on that, if we get to it or don't get to it. But honestly, I ran a couple comparisons, and the math was really close to what I was coming up with. So I think it's still good for comparison purposes.
Yeah. Without getting in too much detail, but are there any War Scrolls you guys wish we could have put on this list on top of these 6? Ryan?
I was a little surprised by some of these choices, like Light of Eltharion. I know he got a glow up. I definitely agree about Blade Lords. Banner Blade definitely got a glow up too, with his plus our rerolling charges, big bubble. Basically you could have just put all of the Alarith units in here. Like I think the Stone Mage is pretty clutch. But you don't want the whole thing to be Alarith. I definitely am happy to see that the Ballista has more of a function now. just to be a cheaper version of giving the Sentinels extra range, and obviously they give it to each other. Yeah, I don't know. I think this looks pretty solid. I'll think about it and see if there's anything else that pops up while you guys are discussing it.
Yeah, Siegfried, most of these choices, I shared most of those choices. I would not have included the Ballista if you were not present. So the Ballista is a bit of your call. And I might not have included Light of Eltharion, but is there anything else you would have put on this list?
Perhaps the Stone Maids.
Yeah, as Ryan
because
mentioned.
he got the +1 to save, he got access to great command traits, great artifacts, great spells. He's certainly one of the winners of the new Battletome.
I think personally I would probably put the Enlightener instead of the Ballista myself. But other than that, this list will cover most of the things that are important. Okay, speaking of important, let's move on, because we're on time limit here. Light of Eltharion, 240, I think you went down 10 points?
Up 20.
Yeah.
Oof, jeez, okay. Maybe he used to be 250 or something, I don't know. But he's still a melee blender, or he's supposed to be a melee blender, and he's still immune to modifiers for his hits and his saves, both negative and positive. Not for the hits per se, but you don't need a positive modifier to hit because he's already hitting on a 2+. The improvement that he got is that his Fang Sword has gone to flat out 3 damage, which is pretty cool, I would say.
Both of the melee profiles went from D3 to 3.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I misread that then, because I thought that was the case, and then I looked at a picture and I probably saw it wrong. Okay, cool. So that's a huge boon. The question is it enough to make him useful? Because he's still slow. He lost his command ability, which was never useful before and would have been massively useful now. Ryan, while we still have you here, what do you think about Eltharion?
He got an extra wound, so that he's a little tankier, and now the Selenari Blade can now target non-hero monsters as well as what he had before. So you know, if you're going up against a non-hero monster for some reason, and it does 2d3 damage instead, which generally outperforms what it used to do, but can technically go lower. No, I mean, I think he's good. I was tempted to make have them run up the middle of the board. And just be a total, like, you don't want to be in the middle of the board kind of scenario. That could be kind of fun. Put cogs in the list and give them both +1 to charge or whatever it is. But you know, I think it's more just a fun thing. I don't know if it's pulling as much weight as some of the other things are.
Yeah. Siegfried?
Well, the main problem Eltharion had was his inconsistency in the damage. D3 could go south, and there is this thing, because with all the D3 and D6 damage, when you make your strategic decisions, you make them while you think of the average, right? So if you go and your unit overperforms, you will still do what you set out to do, most likely, unless you were gambling on something. So you didn't gain as much, but if your unit underperforms, then that may cost you a battle tactic and likely the game. So having him do 3 damage instead of D3, apart from the obvious thing that he does more damage, it's the consistency. And all his other stats are very consistent. So now you have a piece that can do consistent damage, and perhaps 1 wound is not that much, but again, it's a huge difference, even 1 wound, because now if he suffers 2 d6 mortal wounds, statistically he won't die, most likely.
Yeah.
So even 1 wound is important, and I've recently have been using him in order to avoid using Galetian veterans mostly, but I've seen that if you pair him correctly, I mean, he was able to tank an incarnate for a battle round and for a turn, and almost for a second turn, while making the incarnate lose a level. So he can do very good work, and yes, he can be mortal wounded to death, but if you have enough threats in your army, then it becomes a choice. And I mean, will the opponent throw his mortal wounds on Eltharion or on your shooting? That gives him a headache. So I think if he is used properly now, with the fact that he's consistent, he can be a valuable asset. And doing so much damage with a character for 240 points is good.
Yeah.
It's one of the few melee heroes that is worth it now.
Yeah. Before his changes, I compared him a little bit to Vanda's Hammerhand because they had this sort of the same damage, and Vanda's is obviously way faster, but they had similar abilities. I'm very bummed that he lost his 10 Bravery Bubble command ability. I understand that they're getting rid of all the command abilities on War Scrolls, but Vanda's had the same ability. Actually, it was better. It just made you Bravery immune wholly within 24 inches. Now that's just a static bubble. It's not even a command ability anymore. I don't really see a reason why you would not leave it in for Eltharion. It's not as if he was overpicked before and he's going to be overpicked now. But as you say, he's a very strong melee piece, and I also think he's very good distraction because he looks fancy, he sounds fancy, so people are going to want to invest resources in killing him, and if they do, go ahead. He's often way tankier than you would expect. Ryan, how do you feel about...
I mean, if I saw a guy on the field that I could see straight through and wasn't Nighthaunt, I'd be pretty intimidated too. So yeah, why not? It's a beautiful model. He's fantastic.
My one wish for Eltharion was that he... Go ahead, Sig.
He's self-sufficient. Apart from speed of his, you don't need to invest on him in any way.
Yes.
He doesn't need all-out attack, all-out defense. He's very self-sufficient, and that has a value on its own.
Yeah, I agree. The sad thing is he doesn't really benefit from Aether Quartz, so
yeah,
I always feel a little bit bummed out about that. But other than that, I feel like he should be a spellcaster because he was in the world that was, and I don't really see a reason why he wouldn't at least get a spell. But you know, there is that one thing. Let's look at some calculation that you did, Siegfried. So here you've compared Eltharion with Avalanor and the Spirit of the Mountain and also the Incarnate. Let's not dive into every detail here, but just an overall perspective on his damage. Is there anything you want to explain about this?
Well, I have him charging, so he gets the +1 to wound on the Fang Sword.
Yeah.
And I also try to simulate the searing darts of light by having, well, I use an app, so I try to simulate him doing just a bit lower of 2 mortal wounds. So it's not exact math-wise, but it's pretty close, I think, to what he will do if he charges and uses his shooting attack on the same target.
Yeah. Yeah.
His damage
it's looking pretty good, his damage.
Sorry?
His damage is looking really good here.
Yes, it is. It's much better. And regarding the Avalanor and Spirits of the Mountain, I included their shooting, but I did not include the immovable ability.
Okay. Because
it's very situational, and I like to think that you take the initiative. I mean, you won't go on purpose and sit still and not charge if you can, just to perhaps get the +1 attack in the following combat phase. If you can charge with the mountains, you will charge.
Okay, Ryan, anything you want to add here on the mathematical side of this conversation?
We talked about this a little bit earlier. Comparing to the Incarnate is always a little tricky because the Incarnate doesn't, as soon as you quote unquote kill him, he doesn't stop fighting. Whereas if you kill one of these other guys, if you get lucky, you kill them before they get to fight, then that's a whole turn removed. The Incarnate is guaranteed that extra turn. And then the Incarnate is just such a weird piece. Like, I get why we'd want to compare it because it's taken the army and it's 400 points monster, but it also doesn't have a shooting attack, so it doesn't get to balance out with the other thing. And technically, Eltharian's shooting attack is a shooting profile, so he can't unleash hell with it if for some reason he gets charged. Yeah. So it's always difficult to kind of say one way or the other. But I do think this gives you a good idea of what's possible with these guys, and is super cool. And of course, Siegfried, you didn't use any of the Alarith buffs on the cows, did you?
No.
Yeah, and no so problem. Those obviously could happen too. So they could be even stronger than we see here, which is awesome. So anyway,
only a Valinor.
Okay. Yeah.
With +1 to wound.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, they're obviously good units. And then, like, Jonas, when you're talking about why Eltharian got better, so if you think about it, with both the weapon profiles each going from D3 to 3, that's on average, the way that this stat would be computed, one extra wound worth of stuff that goes through for each attack. So that goes through, right? So that's why it got bumped up so much. And Eltharian's particularly hard to compute mathematically because you've got the things that trigger, both attacks trigger on 6s to hit.
Yes.
For exploding hits, and then one of them triggers on 6s for an additional wound, the other one doesn't. Yep. And then it gets better against a target. So like it actually takes quite a bit of calculation to get it right. And these are really close. So yeah, looks good.
Okay. Moving on to our next war scroll, the Blade Lords. This is probably the last one that you've got time for, Ryan, yeah?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. Okay, so 130 points for 5 models. They're still bodyguards to Sonari heroes. They are supposedly very good against hordes because they get more attacks versus hordes. That rule has been tweaked a little bit. It's much more elegant now. It's very much like the one from the Stormcast Vanquishers now. That's also a good reason why you pick them. They're actually pretty good against hordes now, and they're reliable against hordes, which is important. And their single strike has also been improved to inflicting a mortal wound rather than just a auto hit, and that's pretty good against small heroes, I would say, especially with their 2-inch reach. It's also handy to keep your Sonari heroes safe. I would not, if you've got 130 points left over, they are somewhat equals to Wardens, except for the fact that they're not casters. So if you're running a lot of Sonari heroes, you could still run these guys as a bodyguard just as a bonus. Anything you guys want to mention now before we move on to the math side of these guys?
Yeah, let me, since it's the last one I'll talk about, I actually really love this unit. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I wasn't keeping, since I'm on vacation right now, I don't have the old Battletome. I just have what the app says from the FOMO box. Did they used to have range 1? Or did they always have range 2?
No, they used to have range 2.
Always range 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, still, that's pretty awesome on a unit like this. That's what you want. I think these guys are way better than Vanquishers for what it's worth. They're so flexible. The bodyguard rule, they can be battle line if you want. You can turn them on or off. I would probably start making them battle line because they're cheaper than Wardens once the Galician Veterans thing falls out. As far as the perfect strike thing, that's now doing the mortal wounds instead of just being passed straight to the wound roll, which if you think about it, so it auto mortal wounds on a 2+, which is effectively skipping the to hit roll entirely. The wound roll before was a 2-up, so now it's functionally unmodifiable because it's always a 2-up and can't be modified. And we skip the save stage, so it's way better. And then the flurry of blows could have been better before if you had just enough models lined up, but it took a lot of time to calculate how many each model was generating. Mm-hmm. And now they're at, on average, with versus 5 to 9 models, 3 attacks per, which is great, or 4 versus 10+. which is fantastic with that profile, especially considering now they have and though they can't give power hish to themselves, get a Lord Regent around them, and there you go. So now they're triggering on 5-ups. I think these guys are fantastic, and they can be defensive, they can be offensive. Super cool. I'm definitely glad that I'm got some of these, and looking forward to using them.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about a perfect strike, because if you got a unit of 10 and you just touch a small hero and you pile in well, you're basically deleting them with a perfect strike from 10 guys.
Yeah, it's guaranteed. There's nothing they can do against it.
I mean, it's still it's on a 2+, but from 10 guys, realistically, you're going to kill a 5-wound model easily, which is pretty strong. Especially since the Sentinels are less good at killing heroes now. A little bit only.
10 guys on average is 8.3 mortal wounds. So that's great.
Yeah, that's not bad. Let's move on to the mats, and then Sigrid, I'll let you talk a little bit about these guys, because I also know that you love them a lot. Okay, take it away.
Well, as Ryan said, there is a huge quality of life for their flurry of blows, because not only it was a hassle for you to go above them and count for each one of them how many models are within 2 inches. It was a big hassle, but it was also counterproductive, because you want this unit to be in signing company, but if you had them in signing company, the second rank lost models, so it lost attacks. And now that is not the case, so you can put 10 or a unit of 15 of them, and all of them be able to fight easily. So it's a huge quality of life, and their stats are now much better. As we can see also in the chart, when they don't have power of his, and even if they have power of his, if they're fighting a unit with 10 or more models, they are straight better than wardens. Straight better. If they fight a unit with 5 or 9 models, they're a bit worse with no power of his. With power of his, wardens are much better. But again, it's not a difference that is prohibitive as it was in the past. It's not like one unit is worthless and the other is great, because in the past they did like half damage of wardens. It was really bad. And if you fight a unit of 5 or less models, usually the perfect strike then is the better choice, as it is more consistent and it's better vs lower saves. So I think they're a great unit, and in my opinion, they make for a very good substitute for wardens, especially since we now are suffering regarding bravery, because it's different to have a unit of 20 models and a unit of 10 models with 7 bravery and not 6. It's a huge difference. And also they are more consistent, not reliable on the power of his, which wardens are, I believe, more need to rely on it to do their work. I think they're a great unit, and I believe they'll see more play. Not that wardens are bad. Wardens are still very good. They were good and are still very good. But now Blade Lords offer a different choice, and against big units with 10 models, it's not that much of a big unit. I mean, there are lots of those. They are better.
Yeah, and it's also, as Ryan mentioned, you don't have to make these guys Galician veterans per se. And if you're running these guys in Alumnia, they unit of 10, for example, they count as 20, and they're not Galician veterans, so they'll at least survive a bounty hunter's alpha strike.
And a lot of times when I'm computing points or how much something is actually doing, I will do the kind of computations you see on the screen here. but then I divide by the number of points they cost and multiply by 100, so that we're saying what's their output per 100 points worth of buying, because when you divide by 130 or 150 for wardens, it often is like a really small number. So then you say, what's their total output per 100? I have a feeling because they're cheaper, they're actually coming out on top despite what we see on the page here. And the fact that they can be battle line, and the fact that they're so modular with protecting your Vanari heroes, I think these guys are super great value, all told.
Yeah, I think that the decision comes down to, do you want more bodies for easier screening, easier capping, and obviously a spell cast, or would you prefer the slightly cheaper option but with a bodyguard option that is less relying on spell casting buffs? Yeah, it is very cool though. This is the kind of change that I love, because it makes two units equally good but in different situations. That this is good balancing in my eyes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, so Ryan had to leave us here. He'll be back for his lists with some editing magic, but he'll not join us for the further discussion here because he has to go to a wedding. But we've still got Siegfried here, and is there anything else you want to tell us about this extra profile here, Siegfried?
Yes, now on the second profile we see the units with power of his. And here we see again versus a unit of 10 or more models. Blade Lords are still better,
Yeah.
but in all other instances, Wardens outperform them.
Yeah, it's probably also much more fair to compare the Wardens with Parafish to Blade Lords without Parafish, because it's way more likely that Wardens are going to get Parafish than Blade Lords, right?
Yes, correct. But it's not that much of a difference. And what I wanted to add is, like, if you 20 Wardens are 300 points, right?
Yeah.
15 Blade Lords are 390. So with 90 more points, which is not very, it's not very little, but again, with 90 points you get 10 more wounds. So you get a 50% more resilience.
Yeah.
And then their damage will be much different. Their damage comparison. And okay, you'll tell me that you can make a unit of 30 Wardens and have them be 450 points, which is fair. But again, if you go above 400 points, you go to an area that you have invested many points.
In this meta, I would also never take 30 Wardens, because I'll lose them way easier than 15 Blade Lords. So I would dare risk it to get 15 Blade Lords, but I would never risk getting 30 Wardens.
And again, it's the bravery thing. Now the bravery is really a thing for Lumineth.
Yeah, for sure.
Even the 7, the 1 point difference, combined with the fact that it's half the number of models, it really helps
it's
mitigate
a really good point.
our bravery problem.
Okay, moving on to our next war scroll. This was actually my pick. I don't think you included this one in your picks, right?
Yes, correct. I did include him in my list in the end, though.
Yeah. So the Banner Blades, I have been shitting on this guy for such a long time. Normally, I'm quite optimistic about every war scroll, but the Banner Blade just was so objectively stupid. Like, there was really no reason why you would ever take this guy, and now I think I would probably use him in almost all of my lists, because 100 points is always a point value I kind of have left over with Lumineth. I don't know why, but I thought the same thing when you mentioned that it's that 15 Blade Lords are only 90 points cheaper, more expensive. But that's a very nice number, because I've always got this small amount of points left, too small to take a unit, but too big to not fill up. So with 100 points you can still get a Banner Blade, which is dirt cheap for what he does, because now Woohoo! He allows rerolling of charges wholly within 18 inches of him, which is huge. And you can put him in a shrine, and then his bubble is even bigger. He still has a small mortal wound bomb, which is honestly not a reason to take him ever, but still nice to have. And he's the one reason why you can play way more aggressively with Lumineth compared to our previous book. So I don't think there's going to be many lists where I'm not including this guy, to be honest. How do you feel about him?
I think he's really good. He's a fine candidate for the Arcane Tome.
I think we both have him with an Arcane Tome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a classic combo. The reroll charges is very good, and I hadn't thought that it was as good as it is, because until I started using the Incarnate, because the Incarnate has a aura of 10 inches where all your units get to reroll charges, and it was really sweet when I used the Incarnate and I got the reroll charges with all my units around him. So now with his aura, which is 18 inches, it's really easy, and we now need to save those CP, and because the shrine is worse, we don't have as an easy access as we had to to extra command points, extra command abilities. So I believe this is great, and now he's appropriately costed, because 120 points it will be too much even with these saints, in my opinion. Now, since he's not a wizard and he's just a buff piece, 100 points is fine.
Yeah, I think it's very fairly costed for one trick that he does well, and that's it. Yeah. Okay, I would definitely include him if you can, so please do take the Banner Blade now, guys. Get him off your shelf. Moving on to one of our Alarith boys, the Stoneheart King, Avalenor, 420 points. He went up even more, but I think it's fair for him at least, because he got a massive boost in the sense that his hammers now are -2 rend compared to the -1 before. Which I think, I'm not sure whether you agree as a Alarith expert, but that just makes him objectively better than the normal spirit, right?
Yes, in all aspects.
Yeah, so I think it's for only 20 points?
40 points.
40 points, yeah.
40 points more than the normal Spirit of the Mountain. So it's... If you just want to take one of those, you will take a Valenor. Hands down.
Yeah, for sure. He's still a melee damage dealer, he's very durable, and he buffs Stoneguard now. His buffing is more reliable now, but you can't stack it anymore on one Stoneguard unit. So it's better army-wide, but worse for one specific unit. What I like about Avalenor is that, and he did that before as well, he is a hammer and an anvil in one unit, which is very cool, because usually people feel the need to kill him because he's scary and he's big. And it's very tough, especially in Metrica on a 3+ save, a ton of wounds. You're ignoring -1 and -2 rend. And with a Stone Mage nearby, you're always fighting on your top brackets. And now adding on top with this, what's it called? Molten Talisman. Oof. 2s to hit, I think, 2s to wound. Am I correct?
If you go all out attack, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really sweet, and there are also other changes. His command ability used to be 24 inches, now it's 18 inches, because he acts as a totem, which is another quality of life addition, which also the normal Spirit of the Mountain gets, which is really important for that, because the normal spirit couldn't give command abilities on himself, and now he can. But even on a Valenor, now you don't. Even if he's not a general, he can give the command ability within 18 inches. But apart from the extra 2 wounds, apart from the better damage chart he got, apart from the extra rend and the extra damage, now his aura is for units and not for models. So all units. That's on the
Oh,
tip
the
of
-1 to hit
12
aura.
inches.
That's what you mean, right?
Yes, yes. This is huge. This is huge.
Yeah, yeah, and he's got an extra 2 wounds.
Yes, yes. I mean, he's 25 points. Yes.
I'll take it.
Yes, yes, yes. I
Yeah.
mean, imagine his base 12 inches and another 12 inches. That's like 27 inches worth of -1 to hit.
Yeah. Combine it with an easier time with Shining Company. That is one strong cowboy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
He's great. The only negative he got is that he lost 5 inches on the range of his
Yeah.
shooting
Worth
attack.
it
But
though.
yes, you will deploy him up front,
Yeah.
and he will be in the thick of combat, so it's no big deal.
Okay. Stone Guard. So continuing it in the theme of the Alarith, I figured we'd do these guys back to back because it's easier to talk about them. So they're still 120, which is very fair for all the boosts that they've received. They are now finally the tank unit that we were supposed to have. And they actually deal quite a lot of damage now. I think the downside to the change from this book is that they lost their 2 melee profile, so now it's just either the mallets or the picks, which I am very happy about because I don't like gluing one weapon to it and then losing its effectiveness one book later. But I know certain people wish they kept that kind of flavor in there. But now they have a 4+ ward versus mortal wounds while they're holding an objective, or controlling an objective rather. Which isn't easy, but at least keeps them alive against magic from afar and ranged shots from afar that would do mortal wounds. And they're way more easy to buff now. What do you feel? How do you feel about these guys?
They're great now. I mean, the combination of the two profiles is great, and also you can now add the banner without having to use the crappy profile of the single small hammer it used to have, which is I will now have to model some banners because I have 25 Stone Guard fully painted and none of them has a banner because it used to be worse to have it, but now it's essential, especially since we have the bravery trouble.
Yeah.
But all in all, their damage is great. The mortal wounds is in addition, which means that can be combined with bounty hunters without one thing messing with the
it's
other.
not interfering.
The ward save is great because they're tanky, and many armies, the main weapon they had to eliminate them was mortal wounds.
Yes, I agree.
4-up is great. It's just great. And with +1 attack from a Valinor or a normal Spirit of the Mountain, it's really easy to buff them compared to other units like Wardens.
Yep.
You don't need to roll a spell, you just use a CP, have +1 attack.
And a +1 to wound from the talisman if you want.
Yes, yes. And the extra ability from the Stone Mage, which is situational.
And the spell from the Stone Lord.
Yes. It's you have choices, and while you have those choices, you don't rely on dice rolls as much to get these buffs, which is very important.
Yeah, in an ideal situation, you get every buff off, but they're still good with there's just one of them or two of the buffs. Yeah. Let me ask you this though. I used to run these guys as a screen before they were decent, and they were probably worse, but I just wanted to use them. And I used them as a screen just as a unit of 5. I had no intention of buffing them. I have no way to do so anyway. Would you include these guys in, let's say, just a random Vanari list as a unit of 5?
No. Outside of Metrica, I think I won't be using them. I think for 10 more points, Blade Lords are a better choice. Because if you don't go the Alarith way, you'll probably have more Scenario Wizards and you will be able to use the bodyguard too. If you get alpha striked with shooting, you'll have a way to protect your wizards. So there's more utility with 5 blade lords in
And they
general
also get
as
a
a
shining
unit.
company.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I
And
think you
if you
made...
ignore only -1 rend, it's not that great.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a good way to good time to transition into the mathematical side here, because you made a comparison from with 10 Stone Guard to 20 Wardens, and as you see, they well, without buffs, they don't come out as well, especially not when the Wardens have both Power of Fish and Wall of Blades.
Well,
But-
they don't have Wall of Blades.
Oh, it's either one.
No, the or is wrong.
Ah, okay.
It was on the other page which I
Yes, you copied
wrote
it.
without Power of His or Wall of Blades, and I forgot to change that, the wording. I don't put Wall of Blades on Wardens because if you get to use that, that means that some of them have died.
Yeah.
So I don't think it. I prefer to think that they will charge and do the damage. So I don't use it. But as you can see, okay, with no buffs, they're not great. But you will have the Faith of the Mountains. I mean, realistically, you will have it. And just with that, they're pretty close, Wardens.
And they're much
close.
tankier in
Not as
Geometrica.
good. Yes, and we are talking about only 10 Stone Guard. If you use the spell, they outperform the Wardens. And if you also use the Molten Talisman, it goes way higher. And imagine that the same thing that went for Blade Lords is even better with Stone Guard, because 15 of them are 360 points. So for 60 points only, you have 15 Stone Guard. And again, the damage will be vastly different.
Yeah.
And they will be much better than Wardens for just 60 points more.
Yeah, they
The
lost...
only downside is that you get all your reinforcement. So you can't use big units of Sentinels and all that. But still, I think Stone Guard now are better than Wardens overall.
In Geometrica only.
In Metrica.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is cool, and it is as it should be.
Yes, I mean, it's their nation. They should be good.
Yeah, exactly. Just a small thing. Have you ever noticed that it's something that has been bothering me for such a long time. Have you ever noticed that the on the picture here with the Stone Guard, it's Stone Guard champion, looks like he has a bright white mustache. And
Yes.
from the time that I've noticed it, I just can't unsee it anymore. It's
Well,
just...
and she's a girl, you know.
Oh, is she?
Yes, it's one of the female ones. You will notice that she has two of them have a smaller body.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, so it's even worse. Another thing that we forgot to mention is that Stone Guard now have 2 inches reach. So that
Yes.
means even if this GHB goes away, they'll still be good. And that was one of my greatest fears, because I heard the rumors that Stone Guard will be good, but I was thinking, okay, they need to have 2 inches reach, otherwise it will be for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love these changes to Stone Guard. I think we are a bit too hyper focused on them with buffs, while I don't think there's going to be many situations where you're going to be able to use them full buffs, because again, they don't have a spell, so no speed of fish. They're always only moving 4 inches. They lost their push ability, which I'm very happy for, because it was just ridiculous. But with these guys, with how slow they are, I think you're actually wanting to bring a Banner Blade even more than with Wardens, honestly.
Agreed.
Okay, so moving on to the Star Shard Ballista. So this was your pick, because I would not include this one personally. So sell me the Star Shard Ballista.
Okay. So We have talked, and you know that I'm not that fond of Sentinels anymore, although they got a bit back in my good graces with the new Battletome because they're cheaper. But uh, what I like about the Starsat Ballista is now that it is more reliable. Doesn't need a spell to do work, and before they had to remain stationary to get the +1 attack. Now they just have 3 attacks, and they don't. And before you needed to have a hero that would be within 18 inches of the ballista, and him being able to see the enemy unit in order to get the +1 to hit. Now all these things are incorporated on the main profile of the ballista, so it always has these things. And the 6+ ward, if it remains stationary, it's inconsequential because it's a 5 wound model, and the 6+ ward amounts almost to nothing. So they also have the +6 range if they are amongst themselves, and it's 12 inches. So it's I think it's 12 inches.
I think it's 6, but I might be wrong.
+6 range, but I think it's 12
Oh,
inches for the
yeah,
bow.
yeah.
So that means that as before they had actually 30 inches range because you didn't want to move them.
Yeah.
That was a problem. Now they will move 6 inches and have an extra 6 inches range if you use multiple of those, which means they have a 42 inches threat range. Do you know what other unit had 42 inches threat range? The Foxes.
The Foxes, yeah.
So now you have a 42 inches range and you shoot from a safe distance. I mean, one Fox has 42 inches range. It's 250 points now.
Yeah.
And it's 4 shots, 2 up, 3 up, -2 rend, D3 damage.
Yeah.
While 2 ballistas are 10 points more expensive but have 6 attacks. And they do it from 36 inches away, not 18 inches.
Yeah.
So it's a huge difference, and they reach much further than Sentinels. And if you face any monsters, having their damage be flat 3 is a game changer. And many people, you've noticed, are now using the Incarnate and will keep using it. So it's really easy for 3 ballistas to get the Incarnate to lose a level because it's just 4 up save. Sometimes it's difficult to have the character he's bonded with be within range to be able to get an all-out defense. So it's very easy to get the Incarnate to lose a level before he hits your lines.
Yeah. Okay. Let's look at the maths while we're at it. So you kind of mentioned this already, that compared with Sentinels, they do quite well, I would say.
It is 90 points more. It's 3 ballistas versus, so it's 300 points. Again, the same conundrum with the Blade Lords. So that is why they are flat better. But I believe they're worth the 90 points investment. Because look at the damage vs monster.
Yeah, this is where the mats from Ryan would really come in handy as a value on 100 points. Personally, I still prefer the Sentinels, though. I would still take, if I'm only taking 1 ballista, I'd rather take 10 Sentinels than 1 ballista, personally.
Great.
Yeah. It is
useful in multiples.
Yeah. It is interesting to mention, though, that there is a battle tactic in our book now that you can only get with a ballista, so there is something to say about that. But to be fair, I think there's way easier tactics to achieve to just get your 5. I don't think there's ever going to be a time where you're not getting 5 battle tactics every game. Or at least 4.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
It's not the battle tactic, but it's a nice bonus.
Yeah.
The other thing that the ballistas are good is for board control. Because you can spread 3 of these on your back lines and be protected from deep strikes, teleports.
Yeah.
It gives you some small cheap unit
And no
relatively
bravery
cheap.
shenanigans.
Yes, yes. And even, of course, they can get shot. It's only 5 up save and 5 wounds, but the opponent will have to divide his attacks.
Yeah.
And that can spike the damage, and perhaps one of them survives where it shouldn't. So it's all these small things, but I don't think they're flat better than Sentinels
No.
by any means. But I think they're comparatively on almost equal level, and it depends on the play style of each player, how he wants to do his shooting.
Yeah, I still think I would prefer the reliability of Sentinels and also an extra cast in the Shining Company and whatnot. But just that you have the option of using 3 Ballista now without handicapping yourself massively is pretty fun and cool as well. Okay, that was the War Scrolls. Now we're almost going to get into our list, so let's chuck on here. Just very quickly, this is usually a slide that Ryan and I go over very quickly. So for the changes, anything you want to talk about before we move on to the list? Any changes, great changes, unfortunate changes, or things that might be easily missed that you want to point out right now?
Easily missed changes, right?
Sure. Any of those 3. Great changes, unfortunate changes, go for it.
Oh, okay. Unfortunate changes that didn't happen is our endless spells.
Yep.
Which, I mean, Rune is still great, but the other 2, I mean,
yeah,
they didn't even bother to
super lazy.
to try and make them even a bit better. It's that was a bit disappointing. And the really great change is the bravery. They removed any and all ways we had to mitigate bravery. I mean, they removed 2 spells. They removed Eltharion's command ability. They removed the Cathalar's ability.
You think that's a good change?
No, a great change. Oh, you mean great as
oh,
in good.
Yeah, as in beneficial, not a massive change.
I understood it.
I was
as
like,
important.
Jesus, Siegfried, you traitor.
Oh no, it's a really bad change.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they wanted to make sure that the weak point of the Lumineth Battletome is bravery.
Yeah, I would have loved this change for the first book, because that was so obvious that they wanted that to be our weakness, and we had no other weaknesses back then. But now our mortal wounds damage has been reduced, our overall damage has been reduced, our sturdiness has been massively reduced. Our foxes are not as effective anymore, so I don't really see a reason why they would add another handicap on top of an army that's super magic dependent and very fragile already, and then adding on top the bravery debuffs. It's very painful.
It really makes you not wanting to have big units.
Yes.
Apart from the single one. You can have one big unit and you say that I will use the inspiring presence on it, but other than that, a second big unit becomes a liability.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, true. I think the other most unfortunate change is the reduction of usefulness of the foxes. I still think they deserve the change, but not this change per se. I think I might have allowed to move in the enemy shooting phase still, but maybe only 6 inches instead of 12. Or just make him much cheaper.
Yes, much cheaper. Or have them do better damage.
Yes.
Because the main thing they had was that move in the enemy movement phase. And they also lost the ability to lessen the pile-in.
Yep.
I mean,
which is huge
they
as
lost
well.
all their control.
Yep.
Now, I mean, why shouldn't I mean, apart from them speeding on the battlefield and go getting desecrate their lands or something as such, why wouldn't I use another shooting unit? They don't offer anything else.
Yep, I made the comparison to someone in the Discord. You can either choose one Fox or a Ballista, and let's just say it's a bit more points, of course, but Dawn Riders. I would always take Dawn Riders and the Ballista over one Fox now.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, anyway. That's all of our saltiness out of the way. Is there any change apart from all the Alarith stuff that you really enjoy right now? I can think of one.
Okay, I liked the change on the Lord Regent.
Okay.
I like that our general can now fight. It's not a great fighter.
No, but he can at least defend himself.
Yes, he can go and kill a small hero.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
If he uses the power, now he can use the greater power of his on himself.
Yeah.
And I think with that he can go and reliably kill a small hero, which he couldn't even do that before, which was sad.
I think my favorite small change that they did is the change to Shining Company. Because I was always that guy that used Wardens as an offensive beatstick. And I had to break Shining Company for that, and then afterwards they would just die to the retaliation whenever it came. And now you can just stay in your Shining Company, which is so juicy. Especially with the Bannerblade rerolls, you'll see that I really hammered down on that concept on my list. Speaking of which, let's move on to the list. So here we've got Ryan quickly joining us again for his list. So Ryan, we come to the army lists, and you're the first one to rock us like a hurricane or a huracan.
Yeah.
Take it away.
So I'm back. Obviously, I took a break in there, but I'll do this and then say my goodbyes as soon as we're done here. But anyway, the idea with this was, again, that I really like cavalry, elite armies. I like speed, and I've always liked the Hurakan Helon type vibe that's going on. So I wanted to see if I could make kind of a fun list with this that might still surprise people. We'll see. I took Grand Strategy Take What's Theirs because you guys did not get good Grand Strategies in per se. Actually, the Alarith one's pretty good. And then Take What's Theirs is pretty good for this army because I'm so fast to get onto their side of the board. And then Inspired just to get the +1 to wound if I ever need that. But I'm at 10 points under, so probably won't get to use it. The general idea is let's see if we can make a Fox's list still work while trying to maximize the 6-inch extra attack for all the shooting units. So if I'm not mistaken, everyone in this list can benefit from that except for the Wind Mage, which is kind of funny. Of course, the Wind Mage no longer buffs the Spirits of the Wind and Sevireth, to heal them, which is kind of a bummer. But it does free me up to not have to feel compelled to keep him around them. I gave him the Grand Wind Rider command trait, which is the one that gives the Wind Chargers the 24-inch bubble of +2 movement and fly, which is fun. So in a sense, I've got an almost all flying list here. I was thinking about making it entirely Spirits of the Wind instead of the Sentinels, but I think it's just smarter to have the Sentinels in the list. And then he's got an Arcane Tome just to give me another spell to cast. Maybe I can do his War Scroll spell if I really feel like it, or the Howling Gale that I've got here for the why am I blanking on what Howling Gale does again? That's the
command spell.
That's the command traits. Yeah, exactly. But probably honestly putting out a Mystic Shield is bigger. And then we've got Spirits of the Wind now, ever since GHB, now count as leaders but still aren't heroes. So they're eating some of my battalion slots for Battle Regiment. If they did count as what's it called? No, I've got one too many. I was going to say I could fit it all in a single Battle Regiment, but no longer can, the way it works out here. But obviously, Sevireth and the Spirits of the Wind have gotten a bit nerfed, but I still think they can get in for that. They can go into combat or get in within 6 inches and then make that post-shooting phase move to kind of try to get out. So if you don't want to get in combat, you sit at exactly 6 inches, and then you move your 12 inches out. So now you're 18 away, which is still a decent enough away from some units to avoid necessarily getting charged the next turn. Depends on what kind of unit it is. And then they're still benefiting from the 6-inch +1 attack. I think that's only a 25% improvement because I believe they only have 4 attacks on the missile profile. But on the wind chargers, it's a 50% improvement. And on the sentinels, if they happen to get up there, one of which I've given Speed of Hish to maybe get them up a little bit farther, then you're maybe doubling things. And it's definitely if they do an Unleash Hell. And that's really the list. There's nothing to it. Minimal drops so that they get in faster. And so you get to choose whether you get to go first or second, and that'll depend on the situation, of course. And then we've got the Sentinels in 2 big blocks of 20, so they're standing next to each other, neither of which are, of course, battle lines, so they're not going to explode to our bounty hunters necessarily. And then they're both giving each other the range while they're within, 12 inches. So even if one does Speed of Hish and gets up there, there's a good chance they can still stay there. So it's just a fun list. It's simple. It's fast. Maybe you play it more conservatively and wait till they get closer and then just unload all the shots, or maybe you try to alpha a bit. I don't know how well it would play, but it's got a decent amount of wounds for so yeah. Any thoughts, guys?
If I can go first, Siegfried, I think this list looks super fluffy. Let's get that sure. Out there. Sure. So this is a list that you would imagine being part of the great nation of Helon. I'm still a little bit butthurt about the wind charge not getting much improved in the ways of movement shenanigans. So I fully expected the foxes to get nerfed, and I think it was they were right to do so. Should they be nerfed this much and still cost this much? Probably not. If they're removing the enemy shooting phase move altogether, it's probably a unit worth 200 points, I think. But the thing that I feel most sorry for is the wind charge not just getting their day in the sun, I suppose, or their time in the sun. But all in all, I think this list would still work pretty well. You're moving up your wind spirits, you're pinging them off, and then rather than before where you were using your spirits to do the screening, now you're probably using your wind charge and just having your sentinels shoot until maybe the end of turn 2, where you're kind of inching them closer to get in combat.
And of course, the wind chargers can still do, well, all of them except for the sentinels can still do the pile-in shenanigans, so they can try to pile away from the unit. And especially considering the wind charger's bow went back down to a reasonable -1 rend instead of -2 in combat, which is reasonable, but they're not necessarily doing a whole lot in combat. So, but I really do think those shots, ignoring ward saves, could be pretty clutch if you need to target, say, a Nurgle hero like a Sloppity Bilepiper or something, and just need to get that thing off the board, or whatever the case might be. So against Nurgle, I definitely think that's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. I just wish they had either given them an ability like the flying revenants get from Sylvaneth. What are they called? Sorry, I'm blanking on this. The one with the Gossamits.
Oh, the Gossamits.
Yeah, the Gossamits. Where they can retreat after they're tied down in combat or something. Because now you really need to get close, and as you said, there is really no incentive to go into combat. They didn't do anything before, and they had -2 rend. Now they have -1 rend, and they're still quite useless. So that hurts a little bit. The Spirits of the Wind losing a lot of effectiveness is what I expected, so that hurts less. Though I still think they're quite overcosted for what they are now. Siegfried, what are your hot takes on this list?
Well, if I would make any changes, I will probably break the Sentinel units, 4 units of 10, for the reasons we mentioned earlier. And I will perhaps lose 1 Spirit of the Wind and put a Star Shard Ballista with 130 points, and use the other 130 points to put 2 units of Ether Wings. because I believe since now the foxes cannot make the move in the enemy shooting phase, you will need some screens,
Yeah, I
and
got.
the other wings will provide you with some cheap screens, but to buy you some time to get extra shooting, and they can act as an early scoring unit. Just uh, let them fly and grab two objectives if you play first, and if they die, you don't care. Um, so that these are the changes I would make just to make it a bit more flexible. I
Perfect.
agree with Jonas regarding the fact that the Wind Temple got bonked in a way, but I think it can still be playable for sure. And it's just it will need good piloting
Yeah,
because some small mistakes can really cost you the game because you don't have any durability.
that's
So
fair.
it needs careful movement.
Yeah, I would just
You know,
love to see you play this, Ryan.
well, I'll bring it to you at some point. I've got most of it.
Really?
Yeah,
Do,
I've got. Yeah,
do you
I'm
have
missing it.
15 wind chargers?
I've got. I need 5 more. Yeah.
Oh, you can borrow some of mine. Jesus, that's I don't even have 15 wind chargers.
I like this temple, and they're actually really good inside or what's it called, Settlers Gain.
Oh yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so 2 other things that occurred to me. I think those are really good suggestions, Siegfried. 2 other things that occurred to me. One is I thought about bringing the Purple Sun to get the extra rend on those important shooting attacks. But of course, since this army wants to be up close, I would be hurting myself likely too. And then the other thing that occurred to me was with Stormcast allies, if I bring even just a small unit of Vigilors, which is they cost 195 points for 5 guys, and if any of their shooting attacks, they have a 6-inch move and 18-inch range. If any of their shooting attacks cause a wound, then everything else until the next hero phase, or maybe it's just that turn, gets +1 to hit. So I could marker light a certain unit if I need to, so that my whole army is basically getting all-out attack in the shooting phase, which could be pretty cool. So I use the all-out attack for them, and then once a wound goes through, everyone else is benefiting it.
I love that.
So,
I love that, Ryan.
yeah. So I thought I was trying to keep a pure Lumineth list here, but I did immediately think about bringing those Vigilors in.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so we're moving on to the next list. This is the last time you'll hear Ryan if after editing, because he'll be off to a wedding. Yeah, let's move on to the next list. And yours also the name of a song, "Wake Up the Mountain." Unsurprising to anyone who knows Siegfried, his list was obviously going to be an Alarith list. So what's the concept here? I think it's pretty obvious, but do please explain, because you've tried to fit in all of your favorite units
Yes.
in this one list.
That's the concept. You figured it out.
Yeah, it's a big middle finger to Sentinels and then just add on everything else.
Yes, it's. I wanted to make a list that will have all the units that I'm excited about, and I think became much better. So it came out organically, sort of. So of course it is a Metrica. The grand strategy is Alarith Aftershock, which I believe is our best grand strategy from the ones we got in this Battletome. It's the easiest to do.
Yep.
The most reliable. The Triumph is for posterity, because my list is 2000 points. I won't ever get it, but I just wanted it to be there. And then we go to a General, which is an Alarith Stone Mage. It has the command trait Enduring for extra 3 wounds for him to be more resilient. The artifact is, of course, the Molten Talisman to buff the Stone Guard and Valinor. The spell is, of course, the Unbreakable Stoicism, which also buffs the Stone Guard, so he's a crucial buff piece. Then we have the Banner Blade with the Arcane Tome, so he can not only give reroll charges, but also grant the speed of his, which is a crucial spell.
Yeah, great combo.
And Light of Eltharion, which I think he's solid, and I want to give him a try with the new Battletome.
Yeah.
Avalenor, which is the cornerstone of all Alarith. I don't think we'll see an Alarith list without him.
Mm-hmm.
I believe he may appear in many lists outside of Immetrica due to his overall just from
amazingness.
his aura
Yeah.
is a reason enough
Yes.
to include him.
Yeah.
Then we have our battle line, which is 3 units of Alarith Stone Guard, 2 units of 10 and 1 unit of 5. All 3 of them are in Expert Conquerors, which will help in scoring objectives and also will help to trigger their ability
4+
for
wards.
the 4-up ward save.
Yep.
We have 3 ballistas which are in the Grand Battery. I mean, it was a situational.
Yeah, why not, right?
Yes. Since you have 3 and I had 4 characters, I included it. And we also have the 5 Vanari Blade Lords, which this is the piece of the list that may change because you can swap them for another 5 Stone Guard, so you have 3 units of 10, or you can swap them for a 4th Ballista if you want to go full shooting.
Or another Stone Mage.
Yes, of course. But since I lacked a 4th Ballista or another 5 Stone Guard, I wanted to give them a try before I make a Zyterk list, which will be focused mainly on them.
Yeah.
I wanted to include them. So I think it's a good list. It has potentially 4 hammers, each unit of 10 Stone Guard, just with the command ability of Avalenor.
Yeah.
Do more damage than one normal Spirit of the Mountain. And that was a reason that I didn't include any normal Spirit of the Mountains, because now Alarith Stone Guard are better.
Yeah.
Avalenor is another hammer and an Alvil, and he's a better hammer than he was, much better. Light of Eltharion is the 4th hammer, and then you have the ballistas that combined with the shooting attack of Avalenor and Light of Eltharion, they can do some good work from afar and perhaps force the opponent to come to me rather than me having to chase him, as it was with my previous Alarith lists.
Yeah.
So compared to my previous list in the previous Battletome, which had 3 Avalenor and 2 Spirits of the Mountain, plus 2 units of Wardens and 2 units of Dawn Riders, and another Stone Mage, I had 3 threats and some units to control and to do some horde slaying, but this list has 4 hammer threats and all the shooting with the ballista. So I think overall it will be a stronger list than the other one, and I did very well with the other one, so I think it's a good start for a first draft at least, because we only got the rules like yesterday.
Yeah, if you're not opposed to allies, I would probably remove Eltharion and the Blade Lords for something faster like a Celestin Prime, which I included in my list because it's just such an easy battle tactic with Desecrator Lance. He's also a lone agent, he doesn't really need any help, he has a 4+ ward, so you really add that extra distraction piece while your slow moving force moves up the board, and if they ignore him, sure, you've got a flying creature, because now the obvious weakness, the glaring weakness of this list is a lack of speed, and you really need that speed of Hitch from the Banner Blade on all of your units, and you can only do it on one. So I think that's the main challenge here, I think.
Agreed. Light of Eltharion may go away. It's together with Blade Lords the piece that is not sure that it will stay.
Yeah.
But for now, as I said, I want to give a try to all the units I'm excited about.
Yeah, because that's 370. That's
yes, you can put the Celestin Prime and have room for a Rune of Petrification or something.
Yeah. Okay, cool. let's move on to my list here. For my list, I really hammered down on the Vanari concept. So I read in our Discord that the Vanari were just out now. It's all Alarith, and that might end up being true. But right now, I was still too stubborn to allow that kind of talk. So I figured let's show them what Vanari army can do. Now the weakness here is super obvious, and it's very blatantly their leadership. But apart from that, I still think this list has some game. So it's in Zytrek, my favorite sub-faction, because it relies heavily on spells, this list. No place for the weak, because if you're not killing battle line or all battle line with this list, there's going to be a problem anyway. And then the Triumph is indomitable to reduce those leadership shenanigans, or at least leadership losses. My general is a Cenari Enlightener. Honestly, I wasn't sure whether I wanted her or the Vanari Lord Regent, because there's so many units that really want that Power of Hish. But she is so good with the double spellcasting, potential double spellcasting on the Speed of Hish and the Overwhelming Heat. So the overall idea of this list is I run a lot of Speed of Hishes. My units stay in Shining Company, they move forward, and with Overwhelming Heat you reduce the chances of your opponent getting the first strike in. And with the Banner Blade for the rerolls to charge and the Speed of Hish potentially doubled by the Enlightener and the Overwhelming Heats on the opponent, you have a much bigger chance of alpha striking your opponent rather than the other way around. So that's the overall idea here. So that's why I had the Enlightener. It remains to be seen whether she's more valuable than the Vanari Lord Regent. Maybe you have an opinion on that later on, Siegfried. I gave her the Master of Magic for the rerolls on the Speed of Hish and Overwhelming Heat. Then I brought the Banner Blade, the trick as Siegfried did, Arcane Tome, Protection of Hish, and Total Eclipse. I used to have Total Eclipse on the Enlightener as well, but then I figured, why would I waste an effort on with a caster that will probably not get the spell off, or maybe just once with her Deep Thinker's ability, and I lose the effectiveness of her being able to double cast Total Eclipse. So I'll just put on a Banner Blade and see how it goes. Then I've got the Celestant Prime. Now this piece, it can be replaced by anything you feel like. You could get rid of the Celestant Prime and Dawn Riders and put in Avalanor, and maybe even an extra endless spell. There's so much you can do here, but the Celestant Prime in my head is mainly for the distraction here. So the distraction and the extra mortal wounds. Have you ever played with the Celestant Prime, Siegfried?
I have Stormcast, but it's been quite some time since I used them. I know his abilities. I know he has the Comet Scepter, which is a great source of mortal wounds.
Yes.
And that he got a huge quality of life change in with the 4+ ward and the +1 attack on his hammer.
Yeah.
Now he starts with 3
attacks.
And he gets to 5 and 7 and etc.
So if you can manage to hold him off until turn 2, he has 5 attacks, I think -3 rend, 3 damage or something. It's really crazy. He gets to teleport anywhere, and he gets to choose once per game, I think. He gets to decide what a dice roll is going to be for him. So you could just say, okay, I'm going to charge 9 inches now and be guaranteed to get in with his attacks. And then as Siegfried mentioned, you've got the Scepter, which allows a small AoE of mortal wounds, D3 mortal wounds. And I think that really meshes well with the reduced effectiveness of Sentinels and the Banner Blades once per game ability of dealing mortal wounds. So just imagine a Celestant Prime pinging away with his D3 mortal wounds, the Banner Blade on top, and the 30 Sentinels. You're going to kill small heroes very easily with this kind of tech, I think. I've got the cogs in here to make casting much easier and much more reliable, and then we move on to the aggressive part. So here I'm looking at 20 Wardens, 2 times 20 Wardens, with a Protection of Hish and Overwhelming Heat. Ideally, I don't want to cast any of those and just go for the Power of Hish, obviously, and try to strike first with them. I think this kind of list you would normally play in Alumnia, in the last book, with the extra movement that you would get, but now that's no longer there. I'm running them in Zytrek. I've got 30 Sentinels, 20 as battle line and 10 as non-battle line. You could say that you would reverse them so that if they're hit by bounty hunters, you're only losing 10 and not 20. I'm not actually sure which way is best. Probably the other way around. But you really need those 2 units of Sentinels now to increase their range to 30 rather than 24.
Yes.
And then I had 280 points left, and I was thinking, okay, I still need 1 extra fast piece to combine it with my Celestial Prime to capture a terrain piece, for example, and to get the Desecrator Lance. But then I thought I could also just take 2 times 5 Dawn Riders. So I first had 5 Dawn Riders and 5 Blade Lords to protect my Lightener, but then I went for the Dawn Riders because, as you mentioned, Wardens will die to anything, and you really need a screen here. The Celestial Prime is a good distraction, but a lot of opponents are not going to take that bait. So stringing out 5 Dawn Riders or even 10 Dawn Riders in front of your Wardens is a very good way of guaranteeing that you still get to hit with all your Wardens. And you know, you'll lose your Dawn Riders maybe you'll lose all of your Dawn Riders even, but then you're coming in with 600 points of Wardens, still in Shining Company, possibly with, or hopefully with Power of Fish, and rerolls on the charge. So I think this list can really put out some hurt, but it's not going to win any tournaments because any good tech list will tear this list apart, I think. But there's still a lot of game. I put my Wardens and my Sentinels in Expert Conquerors, so you got an extra 120 wounds to put on, or bodies, sorry, to put on objectives. So you're not going to lose those objectives if you don't want to lose them, unless you're getting hit by bounty hunters, of course. But I do think this list has a lot of ranged damage as well to keep off those bounty hunters, and you could potentially just drop the Celestial Prime in front of a big bounty hunters group and let them charge him or let them fight him. He has a 4+ ward and a 3+ save. That's really good. He is very tanky. So what do you think about this?
Well, first of all, I agree that Vanari lists are not gone in any way. I mean, Sentinels are actually almost as good as they were. I mean, okay, there's no lambent light, but other than that, you can have them, be next to each other so they can have the same range as they had.
Yeah. They don't ignore line of sight anymore, though. That's also a thing.
Yes, but I mean, it was only relevant in certain meta scenes, because as far as I know, mostly in the UK and in Greece, we don't use such high terrain. Yeah. I mean, I've used it like 2 times.
It was only useful against small heroes, right? That were hidden.
Yes, and I mean, the essence of Sentinels is still there. The Wardens, the same. Oh, they were good, they're still good. The bravery is, of course, the main problem. Well, I perhaps would have Dawn Riders have protection of his, because they have the speed to go and apply the protection of his where you need them to.
Yeah.
I like it, but it's not bad on Wardens, because it's just that only that unit will have the protection.
Yeah.
Perhaps I will break the Sentinels in 3 units of 10, just to mitigate the bravery problem.
Yeah.
So you will have only 2 units to really worry about.
Yeah. That's a good point.
And yeah, I mean, the Lord Regent could be another choice. Instead of the Enlightener, just because you have all these units with plenty of them want to have Power of His just for redundancy, not so much as for you to be able to cast their other spells, but for redundancy. It will be important, because if you fail 2 or 3 Power of His spells, then the list will suffer in terms of damage output.
Yeah, I mean, if you're splitting the Sentinels, you could just drop 1 Sentinel unit and then get a Lord Regent with the extra points that you've got left over. Same with the Dawn Riders. You could drop 5 Dawn Riders and get a Lord Regent in there. I was considering that as well, but then you've got a lot of points soaked into small heroes.
Yes, yes. And the Dawn Riders are great in bounty hunters.
Yeah.
They will just demolish any and all screen units.
Yeah. And they went down 20 points from the Arcane Cataclysm, which was needed.
They give you a way to deal with hordes, because these things can't deal with hordes due to the pinpoint elite mortal wound damage. They can't deal with zombies, hordes, and Dawn Riders will be able to do just that. They will go and they will start murdering those zombie hordes or Skaven hordes or whatever, and they will stay there just enough for you to be able to do your thing.
Yeah, I mean, you could also change, for example, 20 Wardens and drop 10 Sentinels and include 15 Blade Lords. Or drop 5 Dawn Riders and 20 Wardens and include 15 Blade Lords, and then you've got another unit that can deal with hordes. That's also a thing.
Yes, yes.
There's a lot to be said still, and I think Wardens are still strong, and we were worried that they were going to get deleted, and that's true, but I also think that's true without Bounty Hunters most of the time anyway. And if you include enough screens, I mean, if you're not bringing the Celestial Prime and you bring some cheap-ass screens, I was considering bringing 3 Revenants or the Aether Wings. You just need something cheap to protect your Wardens because they still slap really hard.
Yes, and let's not forget this GHB is on a timetable.
Yeah.
It won't be here forever. And also, if you've noticed, there aren't that many bounty hunter lists as we thought initially that they were. There, on the contrary, there are many one-drop lists.
Yep.
So perhaps those units, latent veteran units, do not suffer as we thought they would.
That was my exact thinking. We were all so afraid of bounty hunters, so we moved away from Galician veterans. Thus, less people took bounty hunters, and now I think people have just moved back to the one drop because it's just objectively more dependable.
Yes, agreed.
Okay.
100%.
With that, we reached the conclusion of this video. So we've been going for almost 3 hours now. Let's quickly talk about balance, impact on the meta, and some closing thoughts. Would you like to go first, or shall I?
I have no problem. Whichever you want.
I think the Eternal Balance is looking better than before. The Vanari pieces are much more equal. The Alarith are somewhat equal to Vanari now. They're probably a little bit better as a whole. I think there was a massive missed opportunity with the Hurakan Temple, though. That is one glaring black hole that's blocking all my positive feelings about the Internal Balance. Externally, I don't honestly think anything has changed. If I can be a little bit blunt here. We were in the middle of the pack, and I still think we are at that same point. Overall, I would not say that we have gotten stronger. Some of our strongest units have been nerfed, and some of our weakest units have been buffed to the sort of same strengths. So I think places where we lost, we also gained other stuff. Overall, it is a book that it's much easier to understand, I think. Way less clutter in rules, which is nice. But as for the impact on the meta, I don't think you'll see a drastic increase or decrease in win rate. That's kind of my overall feeling. I would probably rate this book at a strength level of, let's say, 7 out of 10, maybe 6 out of 10. What would you say?
Well, I think we got the Daughters of Cain treatment in terms that it is an update of the same Battletome rather than a reworking of the rules. It was mostly streamlining, removing some negative play experience elements of our Battletome, although I'm not very fond of that word and the way it is used, because negative play experience is a very subjective
Yeah,
feeling that each one of us has, and every army has potentially things that may annoy someone
of course.
to a less or a greater extent. Um, but as I said, it's just an update of the same principle of the book. Now, internally, I believe that the balance is up, Wind Temple units excluded, is great, greater than ever.
Hmm.
It's the best Battletome we had
Yeah,
in terms of internal balance.
yeah.
Now, externally, I believe we are better than we were just before this Battletome arrived.
Really?
Yes, because we have more choices.
Mm.
I think we have more choices now and more ways to play.
Yeah, that's true.
You can still use tech but now you have. I mean, I played Alarith before this Battletome, but now it's much more viable. You have different Vanari options. You have the ballistas for monster slaying for extra range. You have the sentinels for the mortal will pinpoint damage.
Mm.
Uh, we have more choices. Our magic, I think, is lower, is
Yeah,
worse than it was,
yeah.
because we didn't get any really, apart from deep thinkers, we didn't really get any uh, buff or element that can aid us in our casting. And we even got spells with higher casting values.
Yeah.
So on that front, we are a bit worse, but I believe overall the book will be a bit stronger. I would give us a 7.5,
Okay.
potentially 7 or 8, but it will need to see it through after some time, after the dust settles and we get
Mm-hmm.
the early FAQs.
Yeah.
Um, that's my overall view, I
Okay.
think.
Well, with that, we can end the video here. Secret, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. I know both me and Ryan have really enjoyed having you here, sharing your experience and your insights, especially because it's still a little bit different from mine and Ryan's. So it's very nice to have your input here as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm happy to help in any way. This channel is great. I've been following it from almost day one. I'm a fan, and I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Thank you. I also hope you guys have enjoyed watching and listening to us. If you did, please leave a like. Leave a like for Siegfried. Let him know that you appreciated his input in the comments. And let us know what you are looking forward to most when it comes to Lumineth content. We're back, guys. It's a fresh book, fresh guides incoming. What units are supposed to be first? I know everyone was very eager to learn about Wardens and Sentinels. We've got those covered. Which units do you want to see next? Let us know. Also, please do share the video. Me and Ryan, we put a lot of effort into these reviews. Ryan does a ton of calculations and takes notes. I put a lot of time into the PowerPoints. So having these things being shared around really keeps us motivated to make more. And if you want to be alerted for new content, do subscribe. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.